the Sorcerer of the Celestial Dragon line. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Anti-Magic Accessories. Of course, it was pure delusion to think about that now. Not to mention that Allen only had theoretical knowledge and had never made a puppet before, and the conditions here were too simple to make such high-level alchemical items. In addition to making anti-magic puppets, this thing is most suitable for making jewelry, rings, necklaces, and earrings, which can increase the magic resistance of oneself. The chip stored more than a dozen methods of making jewelry. Allen thought about it for a while, and the chip quickly made several plans. The magic resistance of this anti-magic crystal is not high, and it cannot be used to make high-level magic equipment, but it is just right for making low-level ones. For example, after crushing the crystal into powder and using it as an additive material, it can be incorporated into the casting of weapons and armor. The weapons made in this way will have anti-magic properties and resistance to secondary magic. Whether it is defense or offense, it is very useful against wizard apprentices. After collecting the anti-magic crystals, Allen searched in the mine by turning on the scan, but there were not many anti-magic crystals here. Allen only found 5 or 6 pieces after scanning the mine. After refining these ores, only about 1/10 will remain. It is not realistic to make puppets, but it is very suitable to make a few ornaments. After collecting a few pieces of ore, Allen left the mine. It was still early, and Allen planned to take time to make these pieces of anti-magic crystal into jewelry. The purification of anti-magic crystal ore is very simple. It is necessary to remove other impurities and leave only crystals. This is not difficult, and then high temperature is needed to melt the crystal. The impurities will be separated after the crystal melts. As long as the flame is controlled, it is not difficult. Moreover, this is not a large-scale smelting, and only laboratory methods are needed. Use a cross sword to cut a huge stone into a workbench, and then take out a set of simple alchemical supplies, crucibles, magic lamps, and other items. After processing the ore, divide the wear-resistant crystal into small pieces, put them into the crucible, light the magic lamp and start heating. Because the anti-magic crystal itself is resistant, the melting temperature is high and the speed is slow, so Allen summons the fire element to increase the temperature, and gradually the crystal begins to melt. Allen used a stirring rod to stir the crystal constantly to make it evenly heated. At the same time, the chip scanned and picked out the impurities. After no other impurities were found in the chip scan, Allen began to cool it down. During the cooling process, he manipulated the magician's hand and made the crystal into several models under the guidance of the chip. After melting and purification, the anti-magic crystal changed from a translucent crystal to a completely transparent state, and it was still flashing with colorful light. The volume was also much smaller. In the end, 2 rings and a necklace were made. They were not polished, but just rough. While the crystal was not cooled yet, Allen began to engrave runes on the crystal. This is a technical job. Because the surface of the crystal is tensile, the engraved runes are easy to deform. The temperature should not be too low to prevent the crystal from hardening. Chip. Turn on auxiliary engraving. Ding. Auxiliary engraving has been turned on. Start scanning. Start planning the enchantment pattern. Start calculating the best route. Start adjusting the design plan. Data sorting and matching. Start engraving. A small silver-white carving knife was suspended in the air. Lines appeared on Allen's retina, and he began to outline the runes along the lines. With the help of the chip, Allen's speed changed from slow to fast, and soon all the runes were engraved. Then he took out some powder ingredients, took out a bottle of demon beast blood, and mixed various auxiliary materials into a silver-white liquid. Then he melted it into the wear-resistant crystal, and then reheated the crucible to make the liquid and the crystal ring merge into one, and finally turned it into a silver-white ring and necklace. The necklace has a gemstone luster, engraved with patterns, elegant and luxurious. In fact, these are all engraved runes. When the chip was designed, the runes were adjusted, and the ring and necklace that appeared in the end were like a fine work of art. Then Allen activated the magic circle and added the spell effect to it constantly. Finally, the 3 pieces of jewelry flashed and then dimmed again and were completely completed. Then slowly cooled down, and when the temperature of the ring and necklace completely dropped, Allen picked up the ring, casually cut a human-shaped target with a cross sword, and then hung the necklace on the human-shaped target. Allen retreated a short distance and released a flame bead, throwing it directly onto the humanoid target. When the flame bead touched the wooden target, it began to shrink silently. When it finally touched the wooden target, it was only the size of a thumb. In the end, it only burned a large piece of the target's chest, but did not cause serious damage. Chip. Determine the damage level. Ding. The damage level is slight damage, power 3. Last time at the training ground, Allen set the damage level according to its standards. The power of the flame bead was originally 8, and after being weakened by the anti-magic ring, it became 3. After Allen's bloodline awakening, his body has already gained resistance to magic. His resistance to other magic may be a little lower, but his resistance to the fire element has reached 5 points. Now wearing this necklace basically makes the area around the necklace immune to secondary spells. Then Allen tested the 2 rings separately, and the results were the same as the necklace, both with 5 points of magic resistance. However, there is a problem, that these jewelry cannot provide magic resistance for the whole body, but can only increase the magic resistance around the jewelry. So Allen is now only immune to secondary magic on the upper body, but this is enough. Magic attacks are used to attack vital parts, so the chest and head should be protected. Other problems are not big. After putting on the ring and necklace, Allen put away the things. At this time, it was dark. There was no news from outside, and the hostile wizards did not come. The station was quiet, but everyone was not careless. In wartime, the more careful, the more chance of survival. After saying hello to the others, Allen and Grey Lilith patrolled the surrounding monitoring points together. These were the reconnaissance supplies that several people brought with them when they left the academy. They were placed outside the station and could monitor magic fluctuations and biological activities. They were checked every morning and evening to see if there were any malfunctions. This thing can be placed in a hidden place to monitor the surroundings, so that if someone sneaks up, it will remind the people on duty to prepare in advance. The 3 walked very quickly. After a while, they checked the east and south. There was no malfunction. Then the 3 came to the west. There were more beasts in the west. The detection disc was buried under a stone. After testing, it was running normally, so everyone went to the next one. Soon the 3 checked all the detection discs. This is just one of the monitoring methods. Chapter 52 Sneak Attack. The last time everyone shared the bloodthirsty honey, Lilith used one of the bottles to sign a contract with a flower fairy. Flower fairies are magical creatures that are 30 centimeters tall. In the previous life, such creatures only existed in fantasy, but here they really exist. Flower fairies belong to the fairy family. They are more common in the elf forest and rarely seen in other places. This kind of creature is naturally timid, but they are not weak chickens. Flower fairies are born with plant affinity. They are wizards on the side of illusion and plants. They are the darlings of nature. They are born with the strength of a 2nd level apprentice. They just don't have offensive spells, but nature has given them magical abilities to protect themselves. In the woods, they want to hide, and it is difficult for formal wizards to find them. Lilith's flower fairy is in the botanical garden. There is a group of flower fairies in the botanical garden. They have signed a contract with the botanical garden. The 5 Rings Tower protects their safety and provides a place to live. They are responsible for taking care of the flower fields and various plants in the botanical garden. They are born to be the best gardeners. However, Allen has worked in the botanical garden for a long time and has seen very few flower fairies. Legend has it that meeting a flower fairy in the forest will bring good luck. These flower fairies themselves represent luck. One of the lucky cards in the tarot cards is a flower fairy. Lilith was lucky to sign the contract, but it was also lucky for Allen and his friends. This mission was surrounded by trees, and the flower fairy was like a fish in water here. It can communicate with the surrounding trees. This ability is very strange. As long as someone enters, the flower fairy will know it immediately. Lilith, Grandpa Big Tree said that there are several foreign creatures entering the forest in the south. This flower fairy named Shire wore a small princess dress, a pair of translucent wings flying in the air, a pair of exquisite long boots on her small legs, and a small magic wand in her hand. From time to time, she landed on the big tree and whispered to the big tree, "Is it a human or an ordinary animal, Shire?" Lilith asked after wiping the sweat off her face. "I'll ask Grandpa Tree." He flew to a branch of a big tree and said after a while, "They are animals, but these animals are a little strange." "Strange? How strange?" Lilith said. Grandpa Tree can't explain it clearly, but he feels that those animals are different from ordinary animals. Shire sat on Lilith's shoulder and grabbed a strand of Lilith's hair with her little hand and smiled sweetly. "Should we go and take a look?" Lilith asked. "Okay, it's on the way anyway, let's take a look. They say it must be a demonized beast, and we can earn material fees." Allen nodded in agreement. Gray nodded in agreement, and the group began to walk towards the forest in the north. The sun set, the humidity in the forest increased, fog began to appear, and visibility decreased. The three of them wandered in the woods for a long time, and except for finding some traces of wild animals passing by, they did not find anything else. Seeing that it was getting late, the three of them began to walk towards the camp. Under the bushes, a grey wolf watched the three people from afar. The fog soon covered them all. A cold look appeared in the wolf's green eyes. Seeing the three people go away, the wolf slowly stood up and followed them from a distance by smelling the scent. The wizard's spiritual sense is very strong. If you get too close, you will be discovered. However, this grey wolf can always stay out of the spiritual sense. It will not cross the line, nor will it go far away. It will slowly approach this strange grey wolf by smell. It is very familiar with the wizard. Even some magic traps set by several people are avoided from a distance. It followed until the three people returned to the station. The grey wolf stopped and observed the direction of the station from a distance. However, it could not see the situation inside due to the cover of the rune array. After seeing that no one entered or left, the grey wolf turned around and left the station along the original path. It was late at night. The fog in the forest was getting heavier and heavier. The silver moon in the sky was also covered by the thick fog. Only some nocturnal animals were looking for food in the forest. At this time, a group of figures entered the forest. There was a tremor under the bushes, and soon a grey wolf appeared. "Wolf, have you found the base of those rats?" said a pale and sickly looking young man. "Curry, I found it. They are in this forest. The base is covered by a rune array." The grey wolf spoke in human language, and his two cold green eyes emitted a cold green light. No wonder I sent Wind Crochum to fly in the air several times, but didn't find it. It turns out that this group of rats is covered by a rune array. It seems that we have a good harvest this time. A man in a red wizard robe next to him suddenly realized, and then his face was greedy. "Do you know the location of the traps and reconnaissance equipment in the forest?" asked the sickly looking man. "I have memorized it in my mind," the grey wolf said, and drew a simple map on the ground with his claws, marking the reconnaissance equipment. "It seems that this time is another good harvest." The dozen or so figures behind him laughed. "Curry, you take your team of black wizards. We will go to the other side of the lava tower and the thorn tower. Set a time and make the move. Don't let any of them go. Dale, you will be the main attacker this time. The last time we took action, we suffered heavy losses as black wizards. It's your turn this time." "Okay, but we want 70% of the spoils." "No. 50%. 50% is not enough. We will definitely suffer heavy losses in a frontal attack. We need at least 70%. "You are talking nonsense. Last time we attacked, we only took 60%. This time, you will get the same amount at most." "Okay, 60%, but the kills of an individual belong to the individual. If we win, we have the right to choose one first." "Why?" "Because my partner discovered their base." After saying that, he ignored the wizard from the ghost tower and followed the grey wolf into the forest. The two teams had a total of 20 people, and there were two teams for the black wizards and the white wizards. After assigning the tasks, the two teams walked into the forest in a clear division. The forest was filled with thick fog, and the front 10 meters was immersed in the fog. No human figures could be seen. Fortunately, the wizard also wanted to hide his figure. The fog completely concealed all the wizards. The dark fog rolled from time to time, and a group of figures appeared and disappeared. The insects and other animals around had long disappeared. The depressing atmosphere spread in the forest. A short and nimble wizard dismantled the magic traps around one by one, and there was no movement in the station in the distance. The forest in the fog was like a monster with a big mouth. It swallowed all the sounds. As the distance got closer, the group of people became more cautious. Chapter 53 Fierce Battle 1. The group quietly approached the station. At this time, the forest was silent. Suddenly, a Byron voice sounded. Greasy spell. The voice was sudden, like a thunderclap in the silent woods. A layer of oil film instantly appeared under the feet of these wizards, followed by a plop, ouch sound. Get out of the way. The leading wizard did not stand at all. He shouted and rolled to the side, trying to leave the smooth ground. But it was too late. At the moment when everyone fell, a flame bead flew out and fell on the ground formed by the greasy spell in the shocked eyes of several wizards. This kind of grease with added combustion aid and special blending was made by Allen with great effort. Not only does it burn more lastingly and quickly, but it is also first class in smoothness. As early as when Allen and his friends returned, Shire found the grey wolf. Although it had always been out of the sensing range of the wizard apprentice, the trees in the forest were all Shire's eyes, and she soon found it. As a result, the apprentices of the Five Rings Tower, who were regarded as prey by this group of people, had already discovered them. The reason why sneak attacks are sneak attacks is that the most important thing is stealing. When your actions are known to others, it means that you are only a little bit away from death. This group of people walked into Allen's ambush circle without knowing it, and were burned directly. All 10 people in the group were burned, but wizards were not so easy to kill. A few of them had a flash of spiritual light on their bodies, and they separated the flames. Although they were embarrassed, they did not receive much damage. A few were unlucky, and were covered with flames. Then the ninjas in a hurry cast a protective spell in pain. Allen naturally would not wait until they were ready to attack. He pointed the flame ring in his hand, and the remaining 2 flame beads flew directly to a wizard apprentice, who was seriously burned, instantly breaking his protective spell and blowing him away. Then Allen stretched out his hand and wiped the blade, and the spell effect of the magic weapon made the blade sharper. A flash of sword light flashed by, the grace of a cat, the tenacity of a bear, and several secondary spells of giant strength were released one after another. With the cross sword in his hand waving, Allen jumped out directly from his hiding place and rushed to a wizard apprentice who was casting a spell. Sword dart decapitation. Allen swung the cross sword and rushed to the wizard apprentice. In an instant, the cross sword slashed down. The cross sword with magic weapons attached to it broke through his protective magic unstoppably and then beheaded him with a sword. Fresh red blood spurted out, and the beheaded head still had a look of shock on his face. With a light tap of his feet, Allen instantly rushed to another wizard and hit him with his shoulder, knocking him out instantly, hitting another wizard apprentice who was casting a spell behind him, and then jumped up. Sword dart slashing with the trend. Just as Allen jumped up, 2 third-level apprentices released arrows and flame beads in succession. Then, when Allen jumped up and couldn't dodge, he hit him hard, and the 2 of them breathed a sigh of relief. However, before the magic aura faded, a sword light fell instantly, and the 2 wizard apprentices who fell to the ground didn't even make a sound. Allen's sword cut them into 2 parts, and then they continued to rush to the next target without stopping. Only then did the 2 realize that Allen had no injuries except for some damage to his clothes. In a blink of an eye, nearly half of the 2 5-man teams had been killed, and the others were also in a mess. Seeing Allen rushing up again, he quickly raised his arm and shot a crossbow without looking. Allen dodged 2 fine steel feather arrows in succession, knocked one away with a cross sword, and rushed to another wizard apprentice with the remaining 2. Sword dart spinning slash. Allen twisted his body, and the long sword in his hand spun around, as fast as lightning. The wizard apprentice only felt a bright light in front of his eyes, and then fell into endless darkness. The 2 steel feather arrows that shot at Allen fell off with Allen's movements. Only 2 red spots appeared on his skin. After a little blood flowed out, he recovered. 2 of the remaining 5 people were frightened. They screamed and left a few people behind, and turned around to run. Come back, don't run. He is alone. Damn it. "Coward," one of the 3rd level wizard apprentices shouted angrily. But the two fleeing figures did not stop at all and ran towards the depths of the thick fog. Allen slid to avoid the 2 gravity spells and then held the hilt of the sword with both hands behind him. Flash spell. The prepared spell was released instantly and the dazzling white light instantly pierced the darkness. Even the thick fog could not block the dazzling light. The 3 people's eyes instantly felt stinging. "My eyes." Allen opened his eyes and the long sword did not stop. With one sword, he cut the throat of the unlucky wizard apprentice in front of him, whose eyes were constantly crying, and the screaming sound stopped abruptly. He fell to the ground with blood gushing from his throat. His mouth looked like a fish on the shore, and he was twitching on the ground with his hands covering his neck. He jumped lightly to avoid the splattered blood, and then a crystal test tube brushed against Allen's body and fell behind him, and he rushed forward and rolled. There was a roar behind him, and a splattering fireball hit Allen's back. The anti-magic accessories lit up slightly, and the fireball was instantly annihilated. Most of the remaining sparks did not cause any damage. The cross sword in his hand was raised, directly across the throat of the 3rd level wizard apprentice, and flew past in his unbelievable eyes without even looking at him. At this time, the wizard apprentice finally shouted in Byron with tears in his eyes, "Burning hands." This is the wizard with the highest damage that the wizard apprentice can release. A large hand made of flames appeared in front of him in an instant, and Allen didn't have time to stop and ran into it directly. He was grabbed by it. Feeling that the burning hand had grabbed Allen, the wizard apprentice grinned. "Die. Do you think I've never dealt with a berserker? Naive," he said as he squeezed hard. However, the expected scream did not come. The huge flaming hand only trapped Allen. The flames on it did not cause any damage at all. A silver white light flashed. The flames of the burning hand began to slowly go out. Allen chopped down with the long sword in his hand, and the giant hand was directly cut into 2 sections. The giant hand with the destroyed spell structure exploded, and the wizard apprentice was instantly blown away. Allen followed the impact force and jumped onto the tree trunk. With a light tap of his toes, the agility of the cat's grace made it easy to jump in front of the wizard apprentice. The 3rd level wizard apprentice, with his eyes closed, tears on his face and his body on fire, was only able to breathe. The explosion just now made him unable to move for a while. Allen thrust the long sword and pierced his heart. The wizard apprentice twitched a few times and died. Chapter 54, Fierce Battle 2. During this period of time, he moved as fast as a rabbit and as fast as a startled wild goose. With the sword in his hand, except for 2 wizard apprentices who escaped, all the others were killed by Allen. The battle lasted for several minutes, and Allen did not receive serious injuries. It was just that the continuous bursts, with Allen's physical fitness, were a little exhausted. As the battle ended, Allen relaxed and felt the pain in his body. Several arrow wounds were no longer bleeding. He took out a bottle of healing potion and poured it on the wound. The wound was quickly ligated. As the battle ended, Allen's physical strength quickly recovered, and he collected the dimensional bags of the 8 wizard apprentices on the ground. He did not look at the contents and put them in his pocket, and then searched out the items on their bodies. In addition to the staff, this group of wizards had few magic items. Only 3 rings and a necklace were found. After checking, the damage was not serious. The necklace could release a secondary windshield, 1 ring could release arrow magic, and there were 2 more, and the other could release a flame bead and a soil wall. But before they could be used, they were killed by Allen. After putting the things away, Allen did not stop and ran to the other side. At the same time as Allen attacked, another forest 1 kilometer away had already started fighting. The 2 groups of wizards were divided into 2 groups. The front group was not blocked. This group of wizard apprentices followed behind. The wizards from the 5 Rings Tower were waiting here. Shai released the fog spell in the forest, and then released the forest maze. The 2 confusing auxiliary magics made the group of black wizards deviate from the route unknowingly. Then they stepped into the magic trap that had been prepared. There were only 10 wizard apprentices on the 5 Rings Tower side. The plan was that 1 person would hold back the wizard who was attacking the station, hit the manpower here, ambush and kill this team of black wizards, and then rush to support the other person. 2 3rd level wizard apprentices needed to suppress 2 3rd level black wizard apprentices. No one was confident that they could hold on for how long. Allen thought about it and stepped forward to take on this dangerous task. The other few people went to ambush the black wizards, but no one expected that the team of wizard apprentices was wiped out by Allen alone. However, this group of black wizards encountered an accident. Although Arthur and others killed 2 wizard apprentices in a sneak attack, the black wizards who reacted resisted the magic offensive of Arthur and others. Although everyone was injured, the 2 sides fell into a stalemate. The group of black wizards were not worried when they saw this situation and tried to maintain this state because they knew that there would not be too many people in this stronghold and the remaining people would definitely not be able to withstand another sneak attack team. Arthur and others were also anxious. They were also worried that if they dragged on for too long, another sneak attack team would deal with Allen and then come back and directly outflank and take down all of their own people. The battle entered a white hot stage at the beginning. The 2 wizard apprentices were trapped with ice traps, and then they were killed instantly with concentrated fire. The black wizards had already reacted and instantly activated the defensive magic, and then resisted step by step, not seeking merit, but seeking no fault. They were on guard, and Arthur and his men had no chance to defeat them in one fell swoop. They could only slowly consume them and then kill them. However, time was urgent. They attacked twice by force, but only 2 black wizards were injured, and one of their own was also injured. They were completely trapped in a war of attrition. Arthur and his men were anxious and wanted to retreat, but the black wizards were sure that another team would come to support them soon. Seeing the signs of retreat, they immediately entangled them tightly, and as a result, Arthur and his men were completely beaten to death here. They could not advance or retreat. As time passed, the sound of spells in the distance disappeared. Obviously, in such a short time, Allen, who stayed in the station, had failed, and the group of victorious wizard apprentices would soon come to support them. The black wizards were relieved, and began to think about how to deal with these guys who attacked them. As hunters, they were bitten back by the prey, and then they were beaten to the ground. These black wizards were filled with evil fire in their hearts. They thought that they would be able to torture these damn wizard apprentices severely in a while, and they felt very happy. Arthur and his companions looked at each other. Their minds were distracted, their eyes flickering, and they were thinking about their retreat, but they were worried that if they moved, the situation would turn into a rout, and they would be chased by the wizard apprentices behind them with support. Time passed by, and just when everyone decided to take the risk, escape together, and then disperse and retreat, one person at a time, a figure jumped down from the treetops more than 10 meters high. The black wizard with a happy face shouted, "Damn rats, you are dead. Our reinforcements are here." Haha. He couldn't help laughing. Arthur and others' faces changed drastically in an instant, and just as they were about to escape, they saw that the figure was very familiar. Allen was greeting, and this heaven-falling justice was that he jumped forward on the treetops, saw the black wizards, and jumped down directly to attack, and these black wizards not only did not attack, but laughed here. What kind of operation is this? Is it the black wizards' new tactics? Oh, I see. You want me to let my guard down, and then attack me? That must be the case. Before he could think about it, Allen had already jumped out. The black wizard who was laughing wildly was stepped on by Allen, and his laughter stopped abruptly. Seeing that the black wizards were a little dazed, Allen was not dazed. Swordsmanship welling / plus swordsmanship moonarch / a sword light rose up instantly, and the 2 black wizards around Allen had no time to react. One was beheaded, and the other's arm was directly cut off. The huge pain made him wail constantly, and then he exerted force and chopped the other one away with a moonarch slash. The 2 sides were stunned when the sword fell, and then the black wizard, who came to his senses in an instant, threw the spells in his hand at Allen. Allen did not dodge at all, and rushed to a black wizard with several spells such as Shadow Ball and Shadow Arrow. Holding a sword in one hand, and pointing with the other hand, vertigo the black wizard felt, as if his brain was hit hard, and his headache became more severe. His body was shaky, and before he could recover, he felt a pain in his chest. Then the figure in front of him swayed, and then there was darkness. The remaining 4 people were shocked at this time. Instead of waiting for reinforcement, they waited for a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus Rex, who carried the spell, and rushed into the crowd. He killed 3 people with a knife. He couldn't think of resisting, and turned to run, but it was too late. The continuous spells that reacted to it didn't give the black wizards any chance. After only resisting a few times, he was completely submerged and finally dismembered by the spell. Allen shook his head and gave up the idea of snatching heads again. P.S. I want to complain about the doctor's handwriting. I was sick yesterday, Sunday, and went to the hospital. The doctor's prescription was written in very sloppy handwriting. When I went to pay, the lady typed out my name with the wrong character. I didn't notice it at the time, and I couldn't get reimbursed because it was the weekend. I went to get reimbursed today, Monday, and then she said the name was wrong and asked me to find the person who made the receipt. I went back and forth for a whole morning, but still didn't get reimbursed. In the end, she said to come back on Thursday, and that person was at work on Thursday. P.S. Some readers have reported that there are too many typists and missing characters. The author will pay attention to the review. The author is a new writer and types very slowly. I will pay attention to it in the future. Please forgive me. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 News. The battle was over. Except for the 2 wizard apprentices who escaped, all the others were killed. The 2 who escaped could not hide in the forest at all. Lilith and another 3rd level wizard apprentice followed Shire to chase them, and the rest of the people began to clean up the battlefield. Allen killed 3 wizard apprentices, and their dimension bags belonged to Allen, of course. Seeing Allen's fighting style just now, the rest of the people in the 5 Rings Tower were also trembling in their hearts. Such a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus, resisting the spell, solved the 3 people like cutting melons and vegetables. Think about the other team of wizards who attacked by surprise and were swept away by him alone. The calves trembled. Fortunately, this person is a teammate. Allen didn't care about their strange eyes at this time. After the actual combat test just now, Allen has roughly detected his own strength. The physical fitness is that of a great knight, plus various auxiliary states. These wizard apprentices whose physical fitness is not even a knight at best have no power to fight back at close range. The spell damage was also greatly weakened by the power of the anti-magic accessories. The highest damage of secondary spells was about 8 to 10. The wizard apprentice had 1 to 2 spell resistance according to the situation. Allen had 3 to 4 spell resistance because of his bloodline, which allowed him to ignore most secondary spells with the anti-magic accessories. The physical damage of the knight had reached 6 points, which was not as good as the wizard apprentice, but Allen's spell bonus and magic weapons and other spells made his damage reach about 8 points. However, magic resistance is not omnipotent. Now Allen's magic resistance below the waist is only 3 to 4, but in the fierce battle, those people had no time to aim. After collecting the spoils, Allen took out the recovery potion and took it. The injuries on his body were not serious, and it was expected that he would be as good as new tomorrow morning. This time, 11 wizard apprentices were killed, including 3 wizard apprentices of level 3 and 7 wizard apprentices of level 2, and a total of 51 contributions were obtained. To exchange a first level spell template from a student, at least 80 points are required, and a blue potion is 100 points. As for the meditation method, 500 points of contribution are required. Completing the garrison mission can only get 10 points of contribution. Allen felt that it was time to make a choice. If he wanted to get the knowledge of a formal wizard without signing a contract with the academy, now was the best opportunity. With a lot of thoughts in his mind, the battlefield had been cleaned up. Everyone must be very tired after the battle. Today we won a great victory. First of all, we have to thank our biggest hero, Allen. Arthur saw everyone collect the spoils and stood on a fallen tree trunk and said, "To express our gratitude, I propose that we take 2 ingredients from each spoils and give them to Allen." After Arthur finished speaking, he looked around and saw that no one objected and nodded with satisfaction. No one objects, that's good. Alright, cheer up, the wizard war is not over yet, it's not safe here, let's go. Then he turned and walked towards the direction of the garrison. The group returned to the camp. It was still late at night. After the battle, everyone was very tired. 2 people were arranged to keep watch, and the rest of them went to rest. The next morning, the biological clock woke Allen on time. After washing, the wizards of the two teams talked and laughed while eating breakfast. Lilith and the others had returned. With Shire, the two second-level wizard apprentices could not escape at all. After being caught up by the two stray dogs had no power to fight back and were easily solved by Lilith and the others. In the following days, everyone did not dare to relax at all. Although a group of enemies were wiped out, who knew if they would send more wizard apprentices here? However, this possibility was not high. It was just a low-level resource point, and it was not worth spending too much. Allen entered the mine again to look for secondary anti-magic crystals, but this kind of anti-magic crystal was very rare and not widely used. Allen just wanted to make some anti-magic equipment. Hard work pays off. After a long time, Allen finally collected enough anti-magic crystals. After purification and smelting, he got several fist-sized secondary anti-magic crystals. Allen planned to cut them and inlay them on his shoes, then engrave runes on them, and finally make a pair of anti-magic boots. As for the remaining pieces, they were made into an anti-magic belt. After putting them on, Allen went to test them, but the results were unexpected. Allen was not worried about the effect of the anti-magic crystals, but after wearing them, he felt embarrassed. Wearing 5 anti-magic accessories has affected Allen's smoothness, speed, and power of casting. When casting with these accessories, the difficulty directly increased to a level. After thinking about it, Allen took off a ring and tested it. This time, he easily released a light spell. After trying several other spells, he found that it did not affect the casting, so he nodded with satisfaction. The following days did not change. After eliminating those hostile wizard apprentices, no one was sent over. Time passed day by day, and finally the rotation date arrived. On this day, several people packed all the, or for this period of time, stood in the conference hall of the resource point and chatted, waiting for the personnel to come to hand over. In the afternoon, 10 black spots appeared in the sky. At first, they were far away in the sky. As time went by, they became larger and larger. Finally, they could see clearly that they were apprentices sent by the Five Rings Tower, riding griffins. Soon, they landed on the open space outside the resource point. The wizard apprentice who led the way had a ring flashing in his hand. At the same time, the crystal of the resource point showed the accurate prompt of the token. After reading it, several people breathed a sigh of relief and opened a channel in the rune array. Arthur took the token, and after the two sides checked, they entered the resource point one after another. These people came to the ladder to continue to be stationed with Allen and others. What's the current situation of the academy? The war has reached a stalemate. Their 4-tower alliance besieged the academy some time ago and fought a fierce battle. All the 3rd-level wizards took action, but they didn't gain any advantage. The captain of the wizard team who was handed over said proudly, "In a 1-on-4 war, the Five Rings Tower held up. Now it depends on the strength of both sides. Those skeletons, the red-robed bald man, and the green-robed sissy attacked the academy, but didn't gain any advantage. More than a dozen formal wizards were killed. This time they were hurt enough. But the wizard apprentices of the 4 alliances combined are twice as many as ours. Now our wizard apprentices are being suppressed. The soul gathering tree in the academy is actually a 3rd-level demonized creature. This time I really learned something new." Everyone was excited when they mentioned this battle, and they talked a lot. After all, they saw a 3rd-level wizard take action, which is not common in the wizard continent. These apprentices don't even see many formal wizards, let alone those big shots. Chapter 56 War. Back at the academy, the atmosphere around them was no longer as tense as it had been a while ago. There were still traces of the war last month around the academy, and some walls still had damage caused by spells, but the apprentices coming and going were full of energy and not a bit decadent. It seemed that this wizard war had tempered all these apprentices. After handing over the tasks, the other people said hello and left. After a month of garrisoning outside, their spirits had been tense, and they had to rest well. When they returned to the academy, Allen did not leave, but came to the crystal screen to start observing the tasks, because in order to exchange for spell templates, azure potions and other things, a lot of contributions were needed. Allen now only had 51 points for killing hostile apprentices and 10 points for garrison tasks, and he could not even change the lowest level 1 spell template. In the apprentice area, it showed a hunting list, which recorded dozens of seed wizards of the 4 hostile wizard organizations. These seed wizards had a high probability of advancing to formal wizards. Killing any one of them will earn you 50 contribution points. Similarly, the seed wizard apprentices of the 5 Rings Tower are also marked by the other 4 families. There are also wizard apprentices with specialties in various fields. Similarly, these people are also on the hunting list. Those who come here to accept hunting missions are all 3rd level wizard apprentices, and 2nd level wizard apprentices are rare. After observing once, Allen left alone. A few days later, there was a valley hundreds of miles away from the academy. The valley was shrouded in clouds and mist, and there was no grass around. There was no plant cover. This was a barren land. Allen had been here for 2 days. After observing that day, Allen thought about it, and then participated in the hunting mission. These people wanted to ambush a team of wizards transporting supplies. The leaders were 3 formal wizards, and the remaining dozen were 3rd level wizard apprentices. The only 2nd level wizard apprentice was Allen. The war against the 5 Rings Tower, 4 Towers Alliance, was not going well, so they changed to defending. At the beginning of the war, these people took advantage of the 5 Rings Tower's unpreparedness to rob 2 small secret realms, and then began to collect the resources in them and transport them back. These people knew clearly that it was almost impossible to win the 5 Rings Tower. These 2 secret realms will be taken away sooner or later, so they are frantically mining the resources in them while they are still in their hands. Although wizards have dimension bags, the space of dimension bags is limited after all, and large space dimension bags are also precious magic equipment. The mined materials are piled up like mountains and need to be transported away in batches. In order to protect the materials, they are usually led by formal wizards and wizard apprentices. Time passed quickly. Although formal wizards can fly, their speed is not high, and they are all transported by flying beasts. Not long after, many black spots appeared on the horizon, and then gradually grew larger. That was the horned eagle cultivated by the lava tower. A transport team of 20 people flew over from a high altitude, and did not notice the people ambushing below. As soon as they flew to the top of their heads, they saw dozens of magic lights suddenly appearing below. Except for the horned eagles of the 2 official wizards, all the other horned eagles were hit, some died directly, and some had their wings injured. The 2 wizards reacted quickly. Seeing this situation, they didn't know that their tracks were leaked, and they were ambushed. They didn't care about the wizard apprentice, and commanded the horned eagle to speed up and leave. It was just that the 2 wizards in the 5 Ring Tower had been waiting for a long time. One of them released an ice storm. In an instant, countless sharp ice knives appeared in the air, and then they spun rapidly in an instant. The 2 wizards couldn't avoid it in the air. The horned eagle was directly dismembered by dozens of ice knives, and then rolled in. After a few seconds, 2 figures rushed out separately. They looked a little messy in their clothes, but they were not injured. Then the 4 wizards landed not far away. Both sides knew that there was no possibility of reconciliation. Since they couldn't run away, they started fighting. When Allen saw the wizard apprentices using the feather falling technique, he rushed out and rushed directly to the place where they landed. This posture not only surprised the wizard apprentices of the anti-5 Rings Tower Alliance, but also the wizard apprentices of the 5 Rings Tower. However, they did not take it seriously and released spells to attack. These wizard apprentices were now in the air, and it was difficult to dodge. They were all targets. One by one, they released various spells to attack one by one. After Allen rushed out, he wiped his palm on the cross sword, and the magic weapon was attached. The grace of the cat, the tenacity of the bear, the giant force, and the lightness of the swallow had been blessed on him. Before he rushed out, he rushed to the landing place in advance at a very fast speed. The wizard apprentice in the lower half of the air saw the flying spell and directly cancelled the feather falling technique. The speed of falling suddenly increased, and the spell was avoided by a millimeter. Only 1 or 2 who were unlucky did not dodge, but they had already released defensive spells and did not receive damage. As soon as Allen arrived at the landing site, the wizard apprentices who were falling faster threw out their spells one after another. Most of them were aimed at the apprentices in the 5-ring tower in the distance. Only a few were ready to focus their fire to kill Allen. Several wind blades and fireballs were thrown one after another. Allen did not dodge. He swept the cross sword in his hand, directly cutting the fireballs and wind blades into several sections, and then crashed into them without dodging. The magic aura dimmed and dissipated when it touched Allen. Allen broke through the spell barrier and came close. Sword dart rondo in an instant. The cross sword turned into a halo, like a blooming flower of death, beautiful and enchanting, full of the beauty of the world, but symbolizing death. The halo fiercely cut the protective magic outside the wizard apprentice's body, and then cut a deep gash on his chest. Blood splattered, and the halo was covered with a touch of blood, which was even more sad and beautiful under the setting sun. Crossing over the wizard apprentice lying on the ground, Allen was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. In the horrified eyes of a wizard apprentice, he instantly cut him off with a sword. Swordsmanship, decapitation. After killing 2 people in a row, several wizard apprentices who reacted at this time wanted to escape, and they used the magic items in their hands while retreating. Allen did not dare to be arrogant and directly activated the windshield technique. Allen carried the several defensive magic items he got last time. A light blue light film instantly appeared on the surface of his body, but it collided with the magic one after another. As soon as it appeared, it turned directly into a spell aura and dissipated, and then the remaining spells hit Allen directly. These wizard apprentices breathed a sigh of relief, and finally eliminated this berserker. Yes, in the eyes of these people, Allen is a berserker, crazy, and irrational, but he should be wise. He waved his hand and the spells filled the sky, directly drowning these muscular men. Mysterious and powerful, this is what a wizard is. Chapter 57 Ambush. Before the magic aura dissipated, a figure rushed out, with a cold light from the cross sword in his hand, and instantly came to the wizard apprentice. Sword dart thrust. The cold light in his eyes instantly grew larger, followed by endless darkness. The magic weapon plus Allen's great strength easily pierced the defensive spell, and ended his life. Then Allen rushed to the next place at a speed of wind. Allen was also seriously injured by the spell fire just now, but he still managed to survive under the weakening of magic resistance, and rushed into the crowd in an instant. Sword dart whirlwind slash a sword light instantly lit up in the crowd. Blood and flesh flew, and shrill wailing and screaming intertwined. The defense line formed by this group of wizard apprentices was instantly torn apart. The wizard apprentices who had no time to dodge at this moment were like facing a giant man with agile skills. They could only resist helplessly, but only cause some minor troubles. At this time, Allen realized the meaning of the words of Connor, the instructor who taught the course of combat casting. Every wizard has a dream of a berserker in his heart. At this time, the wizards felt that they were being mocked by common sense. If they had a chance to go back, they would definitely find a great knight as their mentor and never go out again without practicing martial arts. But they no longer had the chance. The wizard apprentices in the 5 Rings Tower were also stunned to see Allen rushing forward, tearing through the defense line formed by several wizard apprentices like a whirlwind. With a knife in his hand, he killed several wizard apprentices cleanly and neatly, and then he came to his senses and quickly released spells to support. Allen activated the flame ring, and 3 flame beads flew directly to a wizard apprentice, who was chanting a spell, and then he didn't even look at it, and rolled again to avoid the spell attack behind him. An elemental arrow brushed his clothes and hit the ground behind him, leaving a deep round hole. Allen rolled to the feet of a wizard, and there was no panic in the rolling. Sword dart bone breaking. The sword light swung upwards, using the power of the body to draw an arc, avoiding the pursuit behind him, and then cut off the legs of the wizard apprentice, then turned over and jumped, and stood up again. At the same time, a light flashed in his left hand. Flashing magic. At the moment the spell was released, Allen had closed his eyes, and a dazzling light instantly lit up. Several wizard apprentices around him who didn't have time to close their eyes instantly felt a sharp pain in their eyes, and tears couldn't stop flowing out. Allen's pressure was instantly relieved. Then he raised his hand and killed several wizard apprentices who fell to the ground around him. Then he activated another ring, and a secondary force field protection appeared on Allen's body. Several spell lights instantly came in front of him. Allen only had time to measure his body, but the force field protection deviated from the original route with a slight difference, and he dodged it. Allen reacted quickly, stepped lightly, and jumped up the moment the ground shook. Just at the moment he jumped up, a spike suddenly pierced out, almost tearing through Allen's wizard robe. Then another flash of light appeared, and the ground, where Allen was about to land, turned into a swamp. Allen, who had no time to adjust, stretched out his right hand instantly, and saw a silver-white ray instantly stimulated. The silver-white light sank into the swamp, and solidified it instantly. The swamp instantly froze into ice. Allen took a wrong step, and crossed the swamp created by the swamp magic like skating. Like a gust of wind, he rushed to the wizard apprentice. With a sharp sword in his hand, a thorn shield instantly appeared on the wizard apprentice's body. The thorny magic light shield blocked Allen's cross sword. Several green seeds fell to the ground, and the seeds instantly turned into countless thorny vines, rushing towards Allen like a tentacle monster. The agility given by the cat's grace was fully demonstrated at this moment. His body was almost bent at a 90-degree angle, and he avoided the large group of tentacles in front of him by a millimeter. The waving vine spikes scraped off a few strands of Allen's hair, and the ground next to him was instantly covered by these thorny vines. Allen changed from holding the sword in one hand to holding the sword in two hands at this moment, and then smashed the protective spell along the cracks of the thorn shield just now, stabbing its chest fiercely, and the splashing blood gushed into the air. Allen's vision was instantly blood red. This sword easily tore the spell apart like a weak point, and then killed this third-level wizard apprentice. He rolled to avoid the attack from behind. Although his body resistance resisted most of the spell power, he was injured by the concentrated fire of several people. However, the apprentice of the Five Rings Tower had taken advantage of the brief opportunity brought by Allen's assault and instantly burst out with the qualities he should have. The continuous magic attacks did not give him any chance to breathe. At this time, they could no longer care about Allen. They were busy resisting various spells. Allen's pressure was greatly reduced, and then he kept walking, completely turning into a battlefield harvester. Following the spell attack, the front had just dodged the spell, and Allen's silent sword had already cut his throat. Blood splattered and he fell to the ground and died. Without the continuous spell siege, Allen was like a fish in water. The sword in his hand flashed, and two more wizard apprentices died under his sword. The remaining wizard apprentices were in danger, and could no longer resist. They each used their best skills, and turned around to run, but it was too late at this time. Allen, who was blessed with a light body, was not slow at all. He flew to catch up with them, and pierced their hearts with a sword. Seeing that the other people were about to escape, he flipped his palm and a piece of special grease appeared in his hand. Then a faint spell aura emanated from Allen's body, and the grease spell was instantly activated. With the advanced prediction of the chip, a brilliant decomposition line appeared in an instant not far away. Those wizard apprentices with fast steps didn't have time to react. They stepped on the smooth oil film and instantly fell to the ground. Allen gathered the fire element in his hand, and a flame bead flew out with a whistling sound, drawing a beautiful arc, and landing on the grease spell, instantly igniting a sea of fire, turning into a barrier, to block the escape of these people. One of the unlucky guys screamed in the sea of fire, and rolled out in a hurry. Then the magic flashed in his hand, and the water element gathered around it to extinguish the fire. At this time, the wizard apprentices of the Five Rings Tower had come close, and more than a dozen magic flashes flew out instantly. These wizard apprentices only resisted a few times before the magic broke their shields, and then they didn't even have time to scream before they were solved by the spells that followed. The surroundings were in a mess, with blood and flesh flying everywhere, and people lying on the ground in all directions. Allen's sword flashed and killed several wizard apprentices who were wailing on the ground. It was impossible to collect prisoners behind the enemy, so killing them directly was the best choice. P.S. Thank you for the Kidian coins reward from the book Friends Ning Shinjuki, Jingling Sanran, Wenwu Leo Iu, and I don't eat lemons. I love you. Thank you for the dazzling 5 stars. Lango Ojun Sheo Huan Shieolian 1, the book friend, XXXX, who has too many numbers to type out. Huan Heolanshan, Yegiran, Zimirangan Linchuan Shanran Liu, Dahui Song, Laozi is taking, Kuang Feng Liu, I don't exist. Boredom is the beginning of depression. The old snail without a shell, The Assassin's Absolute Thorn, and many other book friends recommendation votes for. Support. Chapter 58 Stalemate. Please recommend. Please collect. Leave a few people to deal with the bodies, and the rest of you to collect the spoils." Allen looked at the group of wizard apprentices with different looks and arranged. The group hesitated for a moment, and soon finished the assignment. At this time, the battle of the formal wizards in the distance had not ended, but the wizards of the Five Rings Tower had already gained the upper hand, and there was still one hiding in the dark, and not making a move. If nothing unexpected happened, at least one of the two formal wizards would be left behind. However, Allen and his people did not dare to approach this level of battle, so they could only wait from a distance. He took out a bottle of healing potion, and poured it into it. The healing potion quickly took effect, and the wounds on his body began to recover slowly. Not long after, the situation suddenly changed. The two formal wizards saw that the wizard apprentices had been completely wiped out, and the loss was irreversible. They just released a range magic to block the pursuit, and prepared to flee. "Crude, you wait. Go." After saying this, he was ready to flee, but another wizard who had been hiding nearby took action. Boom. The sound of the spell burst suddenly sounded, and the wizard who was about to escape just breathed a sigh of relief, and prepared to leave faster. A dazzling magic light suddenly appeared beside him. In the eyes of the wizard who was horrified, the magic hit his chest fiercely. Blood and flesh flew everywhere, and the official wizard was directly blown away by the magic. "Since you are here, stay," a middle-aged wizard in a blue wizard robe said coldly. Another wizard saw that there was one more person, and he didn't even think about saving people. He just felt cold sweats, and was about to escape at full speed. Just as he got rid of the wizard behind him, a shadow suddenly rushed over from the sky at a high speed. A huge figure knocked him down in the air, and then jumped up without stopping. At this time, everyone could see clearly that it was a griffin with white feathers and an unusually majestic appearance. Being attacked from the front, the wizard's face was pale, and his eyes were bleeding, because his mental barrier was torn. He looked at the figure with horror. "Mads, it's you. Don't you think it's too late to find out now?" The blue-robed wizard who had just attacked another wizard had a sneer on his face. The battle situation was very clear at this point. One of the two wizards was seriously injured, and the other was entangled again. Unless someone came to rescue, the battle was over soon. The two wizards were besieged and killed. After everyone collected the spoils, they quickly evacuated. 2 hours later, the patrol team that patrolled here found traces of the battle and quickly reported to the upper level. However, when the pursuers arrived, Allen and others had already disappeared. In the main battlefield of the Five Rings Tower and the Four Towers Alliance, at the junction of the Ghost Swamp and the Congar Mountains, in a piece of rubble, Allen swung his cross sword and cut a shadow ball in half. He didn't care about the chaotic spell aura at all, and just carried it through. In the horrified eyes of the wizard, he slashed the protective spell with a sword, and his wrist shook lightly, and a touch of blood appeared in his throat. Allen skillfully grabbed the dimensional bag on the other person's body, touched the corpse quickly with his big hand, and then performed the invisibility spell, and the person disappeared in the vast wilderness. This time, the harvest has been made. This place is very close to the nest of the ghost tower. Although the official wizards are all in the main battlefield, if one of them is idle and patrols and affects him, it would be too unfair to die. Allen has witnessed several fights between official wizards, and knows his own weight. The chip scanned their strength, when the official wizards had no worries. The lowest damage caused by the spell fluctuation is 80 scales, while the third level wizard apprentice can only cause 10 scales at most. Allen's cross sword has the power of magic weapons, and is also 8 to 10 scales with good assistance. This huge difference in power cannot be compensated by equipment experience. After seeing that kind of power, he has developed a habit, and will never go deep. Even if he gains nothing, he will not take risks. Half a year ago, after he and a dozen other wizard apprentices successfully attacked a team transporting supplies, they were sent out to do this kind of thing frequently. At this time, the foundation of the Five Rings Tower really revealed the tip of the iceberg. There are a large number of temporary bases throughout the land, which can be quickly evacuated after a successful sneak attack, and the pervasive intelligence is even more frightening. In just a few months, the team that Allen was in successfully ambushed 5 times, and even a team used by these wizard organizations to fish, was eaten by 3 teams together. However, since the bait was forcibly eaten, and 2 second-level wizards were injured, this action has stopped. A war broke out, and the attack organized by the Five Rings Tower directly expelled the Four Towers Alliance, and took back the 2 secret realms. Then it pushed the front line back in one go. This kind of frontal battlefield is full of wizards, and wizard apprentices cannot participate at all, so they began to strangle the outer battlefield. Things like fighting with scattered enemies in the wilderness are commonplace. This place has reached the control range of the Ghost Tower. This black wizard is quite powerful. The swamp is full of various flesh and blood transformation monsters and undead. The Five Rings Tower does not want to suffer too many casualties, so it has not launched a large-scale attack. In terms of puppet creation, it is not as good as those crazy black wizards. There are the most semi-undead transformation creatures in these ghost swamps, including skeleton monsters, corrupted giant crocodiles, corrupted giant pythons, ghost wizards, and countless others. However, these things dare not appear outside the swamp at all. Without the cover of the ghost swamp, the sunlight will cause great suppression to them. However, the Five Rings Tower sent out senior wizards from the botanical garden. It is said that they used a newly cultivated magic plant to eat away the area of the ghost swamp bit by bit. If the Wizard Alliance does not come out, it will not take a few years for the ghost swamp to shrink by half. Allen concealed his whereabouts, opened the chip scan all the way, and appeared in the camp of his own camp in an hour. Tents of different sizes were engraved with various runes, and a large rune array was faintly visible on the periphery. This was the temporary camp set up by the Five Rings Tower. Allen went to his own residence first, a small tent. He used the identification crystal to open the ban, and lifted the door curtain to enter the tent. Although the place looked small from the outside, the tent was more than 100 square meters. This was a travel tent produced by the Alchemy Tower of the Academy. It had good defense, and could withstand a secondary spell attack. It had space folding technology inside, so it looked ordinary on the outside, but it was a different world inside. After closing the door curtain and reopening the ban, Allen breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 59 Battlefield. Allen took out the dimensional bag, poured out today's harvest, and began to pick and choose. It's all kinds of demonized beasts, flesh and blood essence, and these negative energy explosions. Who else would use these things, except the people of the Black Wizard School, the Undead School, and the Voodoo School? Each of them has extremely strong radioactivity. If you drink the potion made from this kind of thing, you will die if you don't have good physical fitness. Even if you can quickly improve your combat power in a short period of time, there will be endless troubles. Be careful not to collapse your bloodline when you advance. There are only a few magic stones. You are a poor guy. Allen searched through a pile of things while complaining. Soon, he kept the useful items and magic stones, and put the worthless and useless things into another dimensional bag separately. With this dimensional bag in his pocket, Allen walked out of the tent and set up the ban with a wave of his hand. After turning a few corners, he walked towards the most conspicuous tent in the group. This tent covers an area of 20 meters in radius. Various magic runes with shining auras are engraved on the outside. Under the setting sun, it shines brightly, and it looks mysterious and noble at first glance. Allen pushed the door open without hesitation. After entering, the space inside was extremely vast, hundreds of meters wide. This was a large magic tent. There were nearly 100 wizard apprentices bustling around in the tent, setting up stalls to trade. Many apprentices were bargaining with the stall owners, or selecting items on the stalls. Allen was already a frequent visitor here. He ran to several stalls with ease, and quickly turned the items in the dimensional bag into cute magic stones. When Allen had dispersed the items, he had dozens of magic stones in his hand. He ignored others, and ran directly to the largest stall in the tent. This stall was nearly 15 meters long, almost 3 times the size of the other stalls. The stall owner was a fat third-level wizard apprentice in his 30s. Allen didn't say anything, and directly threw the dimensional bag containing magic stones to the fat man, and then said bluntly, "Steve, take out the dragon blood grass. I have gathered all these magic stones." Haha, it's Mr. Allen. The expert of the patrol team got the magic stones so quickly. The things are here, and they were prepared early in the morning. The chubby fat man smiled immediately when he saw it was Allen, and then took the dimensional bag with his chubby hands and threw it directly into the counter without even looking at it. "This is dragon blood grass. Keep it well." Steve took out a crystal box from his body and handed it to Allen. "Steve, don't you want to check it? Aren't you afraid that I will cheat you?" Allen said with a smile. "Others will naturally check it, but based on your Allen sign, I believe you won't cheat me," the fat man said with a serious face. Although he knew that this fat man said one thing to one person and another to another, Allen was also happy to hear it. This fat man really has means. Allen took the small box, opened it directly, and checked it for a few times. When he found nothing wrong, he nodded and put it away. Then he asked expectantly, "Still no news on the potion formula I asked for last time?" "As long as you have the potion formula, price is not a problem. Allen, this potion formula is very rare. Although my family has it, it is not allowed to be sold. Moreover, it is a formula that increases mental power for 3rd level wizard apprentices and formal wizards. It is even more difficult. I tried my best, but I really don't have it. But if you join our family, you can use the formula in our family collection." Steve immediately declined when he heard Allen's words and then wanted to recruit Allen. Allen was a little disappointed, but smiled calmly on the surface. "It doesn't matter. Forget it if I don't have it. As for joining your family, forget it. I don't want to be a breeding machine. But I have to thank you for helping me get to." The fat man said that their family has the blood of elves, but Allen saw the round figure and couldn't imagine how an elf could have such a figure. Steve also laughed when he heard this. Those two potion formulas belong to ancient potions. Although they are true, many of the materials have been extinct. I have kept them in my hands for several years and no one wants them. You need them, but joining the family is just what the family asked me to mention. Allen, you have a bright future, and you must look down on our small family," Steve said with some emotion. Allen smiled slightly and didn't say much. Since Allen came here and discovered this temporary trading area in the camp, he was shocked to find that there were many rare items here that could not be found in the academy, from herbal raw materials to magic items, and even meditation methods. However, most of them are low-level meditation methods, which are not valuable. Occasionally, there are a few advanced meditation methods, but they are incomplete. However, Allen spent some magic stones to buy them. Although he did not intend to practice them, it is still good to serve as a database reference. Allen's primary meditation method has been optimized once, and the effect has been improved a lot compared to the original. As for various precious materials, Allen got a lot from Steve, and the two ancient potion formulas. Allen plans to use the chip to reanalyze the formulas, and then replace them with other potions. With the computing power of the chip, I believe that new formulas will be derived after a period of time. A lot of materials were purchased, and Allen's magic stones were spent a lot. During this period, Allen obtained a lot of resources by hunting dozens of wizard apprentices. The awakening of the Red Dragon bloodline has steadily improved Allen's physical strength, and his magic resistance has also been slightly strengthened. With a few anti-magic accessories, Allen is rampant among wizard apprentices. As for some other genius apprentices, Allen did not hunt them. Who knows what cards these people have hidden, and Allen does not want to capsize in the gutter. And those genius apprentices are eager to ignore Allen. Their super high spell resistance and physical fitness have reached the level of a great knight. Although they are only a 2nd level wizard apprentice, they are just a hang up. Now all the low level wizard apprentices know that there is a pervert in the 5 Rings Tower. He is only a 2nd level wizard apprentice, but he doesn't play by the rules. A good wizard has to do the work of a big muscle man, and his magic resistance is desperate. He killed dozens of wizard apprentices in a row, and he is still alive and kicking, without even a disability. Now the old birds on the battlefield have already gathered in advance when they see Allen's dress, and they turn around and run away when there are fewer people. Allen doesn't know yet that people call him the apprentice killer behind his back. Allen was about to say hello to the other party and leave, but suddenly a fragrant breeze blew around him. Allen turned his head in surprise and saw a gorgeous female apprentice behind him. Seeing the attractive face, the plump body, the striking light green hair, and the ears that were much sharper than those of ordinary people, Allen's expression slightly moved, and then he turned and left. This woman turned out to be the light of the academy, the half-elf Pain. How did she come here? Allen was a little confused. Uncle, this is what you want. Pain looked at Allen calmly, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes, and then he came to Fatty Steve and handed him a dimensional bag. Chapter 60 Breakthrough. Pain is here. You've arrived just in time. We're waiting for this batch of goods, Steve said happily when he saw Pain. Uncle? Allen was shocked by the fat man's address. He never expected that this fat man, whom he had known for a few months, was actually Pain's uncle. Could it be that what the fat man said was true? Their family really has elf blood. Thinking about the fat man's figure, Allen shuddered and quickly drove away this idea. The picture was too beautiful. I dare not look at it. Pain only glanced at Allen and then didn't look in Allen's direction again. Steve, I'm leaving first. I'll come back later. Allen didn't stop, said hello, and turned to walk out of the trading area. Pain looked at Allen's back at this time and asked Steve, who was checking the storage bag, with some doubts. Uncle, is this librarian looking for you to buy something? Librarian? Steve was stunned by Pain's words. Yes, that's the guy standing here just now. Are you talking about Allen? Steve blinked his eyes, with an unbelievable look on his face. I'm talking about him. What's wrong? Pain asked curiously. Allen had left a deep impression on her after meeting him several times, but what was the librarian doing here? Steve was silent for a while and suddenly sighed, saying with some emotion, this kid is really a talent. No wonder the family values him so much. Pain, you just came here, and some things are still unclear. Although I don't know how you know him, and know that he is a librarian, this Allen is not an unknown person here. He is a ruthless character who killed dozens of wizard apprentices on the battlefield. The family values him very much. If you can win him over, it will be a great help. He killed dozens of wizard apprentices? Pain heard this, and his fair face became horrified. He couldn't believe that a librarian, an academic wizard, could have such a record. Of course, others call him a berserker behind his back. After all, he likes to use a cross sword. Pain should be in awe of the strong. She couldn't help but look in the direction of the trading area gate in horror, but Allen had already left. After leaving the exchange, Allen pondered for a moment and secretly calculated that he had killed many wizard apprentices during this period, and his points were enough to exchange for a first level spell template and azure potion. However, Allen did not plan to exchange potions now. This was not an academy. Once people knew that Allen had exchanged for this thing, even if Allen was notorious, there would still be a large number of third level wizard apprentices besieging him. After all, Allen was only a second level apprentice, and he couldn't use this thing. This was a naked temptation, unless Allen was sure to defeat the siege of dozens of third level wizard apprentices. Then he could use himself as bait to obtain a large amount of contributions, but his strength was not enough, so he could only think about it. The fierce battles during this period accelerated Allen's bloodline recovery, and he also collected some magic potions that could accelerate bloodline awakening. The dragon blood grass can speed up the awakening of blood, but it also has another effect that is widely known, that is, the dragon breath potion. This potion imitates the breath of a giant dragon. After taking it, the user can temporarily use the dragon breath. The effect only lasts 3 times, but the power is not bad. It is said that the wizard apprentice can reach the power of 20 scales. This potion does not need to be activated for a long time, and can be sprayed directly from the mouth. It is simply impossible to defend against. Whether it is a sneak attack or a life-saving move, it is a killer, and it does not need to be taken temporarily. The peculiarity of this potion is that it can be stored in the body for a long time. Although it will weaken the effect, it will not weaken as long as the magic power is replenished every day. The longest storage time is 1 year. After 1 year, it must be released, otherwise it will explode in the body. The lighter one will have a riot of magic power all over his body, and the heavier one will be burned into charcoal all over his body. However, 1 year of this thing on the battlefield is enough to save you several times. Allen has not yet considered how to use it. Speeding up the awakening of blood and refining the dragon breath potion require a lot of auxiliary materials. There are several types that Allen has not found. At this time, Allen has reached the peak of the second level wizard apprentice. Although he has been fighting constantly during this period, he can stimulate his potential more in battle. Back in the tent, the prohibition will be opened. Name: Allen Farkus. Strength 11.3, Agility 10.9, Constitution 12.3, Spirit 9.9, Mana 99. Status: Healthy, Blood Awakening. Allen looked at his own attributes and adjusted his mentality, ready to break through to the 3rd level Wizard Apprentice. Take out a crystal bottle, which contains pale golden bloodthirsty honey. Allen has taken 2 bottles of bloodthirsty honey, and the effect of bloodthirsty honey has gradually decreased. However, even if it decreases, Allen has calculated with a chip that he needs to use up this crystal bottle to completely lose the effect. Open the crystal bottle, and the rich floral fragrance accompanied by a sweet breath spreads in the tent. The smell makes people's appetite increase greatly. Allen took out a cup and poured a cup, then put away the crystal bottle and picked up the cup to drink it all. Then he took a meditation posture, and an intoxicating sweetness spread from his taste buds to his brain, and his brain instantly felt extremely comfortable. A large amount of active substances has been detected, and the main mental power has begun to grow. The mechanical voice of the chip sounded in his mind. Then Allen's mental power became active, and then he took the opportunity to start meditating on the runes. As the runes in his mind gradually lit up, Allen's mental power began to slowly increase. The bloodthirsty honey turned into a cool energy that moisturized the body, then wandered through the limbs of the body, and finally disappeared in the brain. In the sea of consciousness, a total of 12 runes had been lit up, and 8 of them had been lit up. As long as the 9th one was lit up, Allen would break through to the 3rd level Wizard Apprentice. After lighting up 8 runes in one breath, Allen took a break, accumulated mental energy again, and then began to outline the next rune. The chip had been rehearsed in his mind countless times. This time, Allen was familiar with the formal meditation, and it went very smoothly. Allen outlined this rune, and then his mental energy lit up the rune continuously, and he advanced to the 3rd level Wizard Apprentice naturally. The various elemental forces around him gathered and poured into Allen's body, changing his body and making his body and element more compatible. Allen did not stop after the breakthrough. His mental energy had not been consumed yet. Allen continued to draw the next meditation rune. As his mental energy was consumed, the rune became more complete, but his mental energy became scarcer. Finally, when the rune was about to be successfully outlined, his mental energy was consumed, and Allen had to stop the meditation rune. Then he recovered his mental energy, and the recovered mental power surged in the sea of consciousness like a tide. Allen slowly opened his eyes. Chip. Scan my current status. Ding. Name: Allen Farkus. Strength 11.4, Agility 11, Constitution 12.4, Spirit 10.2, Mana 102. Status: Healthy, Blood Awakening. Seeing that his mental power had broken through 10, Allen nodded with satisfaction. P.S. Thanks to the book friend 2017051718495426 for the 100 starting coins reward. I was too busy yesterday, so I will make up for it today. I would also like to thank all the book friends for their recommendation votes and thank you all for your support. Chapter 61 Exchange. Flame Ring, 3 times a day. Flame Beads, need to be charged. Protection Ring, secondary force field protection once a day. Anti-magic ring, magic resistance +5. And this frost ring, icy breath 3 times a day, so that all aspects are balanced. Allen checked several magic items and began to consider rematching. As for wearing one on each of the 10 fingers, Allen did not consider it. It was not that it was unsightly or too Nalvorish. In order to increase strength, these are trivial matters, because magic items will interfere with each other. After testing, Allen found that the 4 type magic items have reached the maximum. One more will interfere with each other, cause the power of spells to be reduced, or the spells to fail to be released. Allen picked and chose these 4 rings. Others include wind blades, entanglements, spiderwebs, and secondary life recovery, but they cannot be worn. These are Allen's spoils of war during this period. Some duplicates have been sold. Among the wizard apprentices, Allen is already considered a rich man. These magic items add up to thousands of magic stones. There are also several anti-magic equipment and a weapon. There are quite a few magic wands, most of which have auxiliary functions, reducing the difficulty of casting spells, or enhancing the power of spells. Allen chose one that can release a wind element shield once. The cross sword was covered with a wide wizard robe. Ever since Allen was invincible here with the cross sword, those who saw a wizard apprentice wearing a sword would be very careful. After wearing the equipment, Allen stood up silently, feeling the changes in his body. Under the induction of his mental power, the magic items on his body all showed weak elemental power. With the expansion of mental power, with his body as the center, within a full range of 10 meters, any slight movement can be discovered by his powerful mental power. This is the power of mental power. When it grows to a certain extent, the strong mental power can be radiated outside the body and has an extremely strong perception of the surroundings and even mental interference with reality. Feeling the changes in his body, Allen couldn't help but smile. This is the difference between having resource assistance and not having resource assistance. Now in less than 5 years, Allen has successfully become a 3rd level apprentice, while other students in the same batch, even Jerry with 5th level qualifications, is only at the peak of the 2nd level apprentice. Wisdom Hut. This is the place where the academy specially uses to exchange contributions, located at the edge of the official wizard's residence. This is a simple tent with a lighthouse and a scale pattern painted on it. The lighthouse symbolizes wisdom, and the scale symbolizes equal exchange. Allen lifted the curtain and walked in. There was a hall inside, 50 square meters, with only one counter in the middle. An old man was enjoying coffee, with a parchment scroll next to him, and a black panther lying on the floor to the left of the counter. "Little guy, do you want to exchange something?" Seeing Allen come in, the old man put down the coffee and said, "Respected wizard, I want to exchange some things with my contribution." "Okay, but do you know the wizard's rules of equal exchange?" the old man asked casually. "I know the rules, sir," Allen said respectfully. "Since you know it, then take a look for yourself and tell me when you have chosen it." The old man took out a piece of parchment and put it on the table. Allen reached out and picked up the parchment and began to check it line by line. The parchment used the ancient Sith language, and it was written with items and contributions required. Soul crystal, low level, 200 contribution points are required. Water of life, diluted 100 times, 50 contribution points are required. 1 ounce of elemental dust, 180 contribution points are required. Level 1 spell template, optional, 80 to 120 contribution points are required. 10 ml Azure potion, 100 contribution points are required. Lava crystal, 300 contribution points are required. Crimson Eye meditation, complete, 200 contribution points are required. Lava heart meditation, incomplete. First layer complete, second layer complete at 45%. The rest is lost. 200 contribution points are required. Emerald flower sea meditation, complete. 500 contribution points are required. Advanced prayer scroll, 500 contribution points are required. Komodo dragon blood, 670 contribution points are required. Asian dragon skin wizard robe, low level, 150 contribution points are required. Soul gathering staff, 350 contribution points are required. Looking at the items marked on it, Allen's eyes were bloodshot, and he wanted to exchange them all, but this was just wishful thinking. Each of the items on it was worth a lot of money. "Sir, I want to exchange for a first level spell template, a bottle of blue potion, and a high level meditation method." Allen flipped through it and said with great resistance. The old man looked at Allen in surprise. "Apprentice, you should know that this price is not cheap. Do you have enough contribution?" "Yes, sir, I think my contribution is enough to exchange." Allen took out his badge and handed it to the old man. The old man took the badge and gently tapped the crystal ball with his finger. A flash of light flashed. Then the official wizard looked at Allen in surprise. The contribution value inside was more than 400. However, after being surprised, he returned the badge to Allen and said, "You have proved yourself, and you can choose what you want." He took out a few more parchment scrolls and handed them to Allen. When he opened it, the first one recorded many first level spell templates, and each spell template was introduced in detail. Fireball, a first level spell, a fire element spell, a single target spell, with a power of 110 scales, requires 100 points of contribution. There is nothing that a fireball can't solve, and if there is, then just have another one. Ice Storm, a first level spell, an ice element spell, a group spell, with a power of 80 to 82 scales, requires 100 points of contribution. Earth Shield, a first level spell, an earth element spell, a protective spell, with a defense power of 180 scales, requires 120 points of contribution. Distorted Force Field Protection, a first level spell, an earth element spell, a protective spell, and the defense mode is a skewed stance, requires 150 points of contribution. Allen thought about it. After the Red Dragon Bloodline essence is upgraded, he will automatically possess the 3 innate spells of Dragon Scales, Dragon Power, and Red Dragon Breath. There is no need to worry about defense, and the attack is not weak, but there is a lack of clearing skills. Although the Red Dragon's Breath is also a range, the effect of low-level Dragon Breath is very narrow, and can only be used in close combat. Sir, I want to exchange for the Fireball technique. This is the legendary 5 Fireball cult's signature skill. Allen has admired its name for a long time. There is no enemy that cannot be solved by fireballs. If there is a meteorite falling from the sky, check it out. 5 Fireball cult. Carrot. Okay, this is the storage crystal, and there is also this confidentiality agreement. Remember not to spread it outside, otherwise you should know the consequences. The old man looked at Allen with a serious face, and only handed the fiery red crystal ball to Allen until Allen nodded. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Michelle. After paying 100 contribution points, Allen signed a contract to get the energy storage crystal ball. After checking it, he found no problem. Allen exchanged it for another Azure potion. The potion was loaded into a crystal test tube. This special crystal test tube is specially used to store precious potions. It is said that the highest record of using it to store potions is 1,200 years. The Azure potion is like a sapphire, mysterious and beautiful. If you look closely, you can see that it flashes with faint light from time to time, just like the starry sky. He carefully put away the crystal test tube, and then began to select advanced meditation methods. There are not many advanced meditation methods listed on the parchment, only a dozen. Allen finished reading it quickly. The advanced meditation methods here are divided into several levels. The lowest level is the incomplete and difficult to practice meditation method. This meditation method has many restrictions, and the growth of mental power is also slow, and the price is the lowest. The second type is the ordinary advanced meditation method, which is complete and easy to practice, but the potential is limited. Generally, it can only be practiced to the second level wizard, and then you need to find a better meditation method to replace it. The third type is the kind of meditation that requires special blood to practice. This kind of meditation is aimed at blood descendants. It is quite powerful, and is the most suitable meditation for them. As for the better advanced meditation method that can adapt to most people, the Academy did not take it out at all, but this is also expected. After all, there is no contract for the knowledge here. If you want better, you must sign an extremely close contract with the Academy. Allen looked at it for a long time and finally decided to exchange it for an ordinary advanced meditation method. Sir, I'm going to exchange it for the Crimson Eye meditation method. This meditation method can only reach the second level wizard, with limited potential and the cheapest price. With his strength, he will definitely find a better replacement in the future. Crimson Eye meditation method, 200 contributions. As he said this, Allen handed over the medal, and then returned it to Allen with a flash of inspiration, and then took out a dark red crystal ball. The pattern in the crystal ball looked like a crimson eye, which looked very strange. After signing the confidentiality contract, Allen took his things and turned around to leave. Apprentice, wait a minute. Allen paused, then turned around in confusion. I know you don't plan to sign a tight contract with the academy, but you need knowledge. The wizard's eyes were full of vicissitudes. Allen did not reply, feeling a little nervous. He didn't know what the wizard meant. Don't be nervous. This situation is very common. The academy will not embarrass you. After all, the wizard's creed is equal exchange. The knowledge you have learned is exchanged with the academy. As long as you don't leak it and don't become an enemy of the academy, you can also serve as a guest tutor in the academy, but the resources will definitely be much worse. The wizard took a sip of coffee and said easily, "Then, sir, what do you mean?" Allen said respectfully, "If you don't want to be bound, it will be difficult to obtain resources and knowledge, so I want to make a deal with you." The old wizard said lightly, "Trade? What kind of deal? I want to understand it clearly before making a decision." Allen said very cautiously, "Of course, this is a fair deal." The old wizard looked at Allen approvingly and nodded. "Let me introduce myself first. My name is Michelle, and your name is Allen, right?" Allen nodded. "I want you to complete a task. This task is not difficult for you." Michelle put down the coffee and sat up straight. "Can I ask what the task is?" Allen asked cautiously. "Of course, this task requires you to protect some people." Michelle saw that Allen was a little confused and did not explain immediately. I don't know what he remembered, and some nostalgic emotions appeared in his eyes. "That's the family I was born in. Speaking of it, I'm not from a noble family. I'm just a small gardener in a lord's family." Once the Five Rings Academy was recruiting people, they accidentally discovered that I had the qualifications of a wizard, and then I came here to study. My descendants later also had the qualifications of a wizard, but he failed to break through the bottleneck of wizards twice, so he lived in the family. Because of the war, I can't leave the academy and can't protect them, but you can. So many years have passed, and now there are only a few second-level wizard apprentices in the family. I just saw your record. There are almost no wizard apprentices who can beat you, so I want to ask you to protect them until the end of the war. Can you do it? He looked at Allen, staring at him with a pair of brown eyes, and said seriously. After hearing what Michelle said, Allen thought for a moment, what if we encounter an opponent of the official wizard level? Don't worry, they can't spare an official wizard to do these things now. At most, they will send a few third-level wizard apprentices. Besides, if we encounter an official wizard, we can just run away. Okay, I can accept this task. Allen nodded in agreement. But how can I leave here? I have applied to the academy. As long as I accept this task, I can leave until the end of the war. Michelle said with a smile. You are now a third-level apprentice, and you have bought so many things that are needed to break through to the official wizard level. Compared to you are preparing to practice, this task just allows you to leave the battlefield. Thank you, sir. Allen performed a wizard salute. Okay, this is your award. You can choose one of the three things. He took out 3 crystal balls and placed them on the table. These are a first level spell template charm spell, which I got by accident, not the knowledge of the academy, a copy of my experience in breaking through the official wizard, including the experience of practicing after becoming a formal wizard, and the last one is a summary of my knowledge of studying botany. After saying that, he stopped talking and waited for Allen to choose. Allen was not interested in Michelle's experience and knowledge. With the chip, all of these could be deduced. As for the first level spell template, this was very precious. Allen only thought about it and chose the crystal ball of the charm spell. Michelle did not say much and took out a contract directly. Allen checked it and wrote their names on it. After finding no loopholes, he handed the crystal ball to Allen and said, I will report the task to the academy. Come to get the certificate and map tomorrow. After saying that, he waved his hand. Allen bowed again and then left the wisdom hut. After leaving the tent, Allen breathed a sigh of relief. When he thought of the things in the dimensional bag, he was even more happy. He did not go back, but went directly to the trading area. Because this task would take a long time, many things in the place he went to were difficult to find, so Allen had to prepare a lot of supplies in advance. Chapter 63, Seracity. When he came out of the trading area, Allen was already full of various supplies, but there were only a few magic stones left. The next morning, Allen got the certificate and map. packed up his luggage, and quietly left here. This is a war zone, not safe. Allen hid his body and started to hurry on his way very low-key. A month later, at noon, Allen rode to a small town. Salar City finally arrived. Sitting quietly on the horse, Allen spread out the map in his hand and carefully observed the surrounding terrain, and then confirmed it. The roads in this world are really bad. Wizards belong to the immortal species, so the map is a long time ago. This small town looks like a trading city. Most of the people entering the city are businessmen, and there are no wizard apprentices at all. Think about it, except for the wizard gathering place, there are very few wizards in other places. This is the place where Michelle's family is located, belonging to the kingdom of Oransa. After paying the city entry tax, he went directly into the city. The scene in front of him is a little different from the city in his memory. Compared with the city where Allen was born before, this place is more bold and rough, and the residents around are also more sturdy. The clothes of pedestrians around are all kinds of strange, similar to national costumes. Compared with other places Allen has been to, the residents here are stronger, and the language belongs to the Sith language family. Allen has learned this language after the analysis of the chip. After entering the city, Allen followed the flow of people to the most prosperous place. Not far from here is a trading market. Allen stopped at an inn. Stride into the inn. A young woman in her 30s was recording the account book. When she heard the voice and looked up and saw a guest coming in, she immediately greeted, "Welcome to Ross Hotel. We are the best hotel here. The environment is clean, safe and comfortable. Do you need accommodation? I need a room, clean and comfortable. By the way, I like quiet." Seeing this charming young woman, Allen nodded and said, "Quiet, comfortable and clean room. No problem. I will take you to see it now." After listening to Allen's words, Ross put down the account book in his hand and walked out to lead the way. Allen followed into the backyard of the inn and came to a small courtyard. "This is the quietest place here. I believe you will be satisfied." After saying that, he stepped back and walked in. Allen observed the environment. It was indeed very quiet here. The room was clean and comfortable. So he nodded and said, "Okay, this one." He paid for 3 days, told them not to disturb him, and closed the door. After a long journey, Allen needed to take a bath to relax. Although he only meditated once a day during this period, his mental strength was still steadily improving. This was the benefit brought by the awakening of his bloodline. After a rest, Allen walked out of the room and prepared to inquire about the news. After all, Michelle's information was decades old. It was normal for something to happen after such a long time. In the evening, there were fewer pedestrians on the street. The prostitutes who only appeared in the alleys during the day began to solicit customers on the street. The inferior perfume and the smell of men's sweat were intertwined. Allen's wizard temperament directly made these people dare not come forward. When he came to a lively tavern and pushed the door in, he was instantly filled with the smell of sweat and inferior alcohol. The tavern was very lively. Most of them were mercenaries and some caravan guards, shouting loudly. Most of the tables were filled with rum. Several waitresses were strong and hot-tempered. They walked through the crowd and Allen came to the bar. The owner here was a Highlander, strong and in his 40s. When he saw Allen coming, he asked directly, "Do you need wine? The rum here is the best in Salar City. Ice juice." Allen shook his head. Wizards rarely touch alcoholic beverages. Alcohol will numb the brain. Looking at Allen, the tavern owner didn't say much. He took out a cup and filled a cup of ice juice in the oak barrel and handed it to Allen. 10 copper coins. Ding. Allen's fingers moved slightly and a silver coin fell on the bar. Allen sat down and tasted a sip of ice juice. The cool and sweet juice refreshed Allen. The tavern owner looked at Allen quietly. "Do you have anything else? I want to know about this city." "What about it?" "The nobles here. The news about the nobles is not cheap." "Is this enough?" Allen opened his right hand, then clenched it, and took it back. A dazzling light flashed under the dim light. The tavern owner's breathing suddenly became a little faster. A greedy look stared at Allen's right hand. "Deal. Tell me about the nobles in the city. If you miss any, you will never see these gold coins again. My reputation is the best, please rest assured, distinguished guest." The Highlander looked at Allen with burning eyes. Allen took a sip of ice juice and did not answer. After a long time, Allen walked out of the tavern and returned to the hotel. The lord of this city is Michelle's family. For a family of a formal wizard, this is already very low-key. The other nobles in this city are dependent on the Michelle family for survival. Just a month ago, the Michelle family suddenly began to shrink its power, and the family members have rarely appeared in the outside world during this period. The nobles who originally depended on them began to encroach on the power they left behind, but because it was still short, there was no conflict at present. Allen knew that this was because the Michelle family got the news, kept a low profile, and secretly transferred the family members. It seems that they realized the danger. I just don't know whether this danger is prevented in advance or is already approaching. In the next 3 days, Allen walked around the city and did not find any wizard apprentices here. If they were not hiding, they were not in the city. On the third day, Allen came directly to the outside of the Michelle family. He did not alarm others and went directly into the manor. With his spiritual power, he sensed the breath of a second-level apprentice. Allen walked over directly without hiding his breath. The people in the room soon discovered Allen. "Who are you? Why are you here?" This was a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 40s, but Allen clearly sensed that he was already over 60 years old. Although he was well maintained, the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes and his neatly groomed hair had already shown his real age. After taking out the certificate that Michelle had given him, Allen just looked at the old man quietly. When the old man saw the certificate in Allen's hand, his face was instantly overjoyed. "Are you sent by the ancestors?" "My name is Allen, and Sir Michelle sent me. Tell me your current situation and I will deal with it." Allen did not answer and asked directly. Chapter 64 3 years. "Sir, please come in." The old wizard apprentice invited Allen into the house with a happy face. "What trouble are you in now?" Allen sat on the chair and took a sip of black tea. This was the first time he drank tea in this world. The taste was no different from his previous life. Sorry, Sir Allen, we are just taking precautions in advance. No other wizard apprentices have come here yet." The old man smiled awkwardly. Allen nodded, expressing his understanding. After all, although their family had a formal wizard, they had signed a close contract with the school and could not personally protect the family during the war. So low-key and cautious are the survival methods of such a small family. The morning mist had not yet dissipated, and it was still a little cold under the sunlight. At this time, the gates of Salar City had been opened. A team of knights escorted several carts in the wilderness. The heavy supplies made the team move slowly, leaving deep ruts on the muddy ground. More than an hour later, the team of knights entered a valley. The valley was filled with steam, and wisps of mist were lingering. Crystal dewdrops formed on the emerald green leaves, reflecting colorful halos in the sun. The valley was not big, but it was warm. There was a clear spring flowing slowly in the valley. The environment was extremely quiet. A 3-story wizard tower stood in the deepest part of the valley. The knight did not rashly enter the valley. The owner here was the wizard who came here 2 years ago. He was the guest of the city lord, and his strength was unfathomable. Without the wizard's order, he would not enter privately. Time passed quietly until the morning mist dissipated. A figure walked out of the wizard tower and appeared at the entrance of the valley soon. "Paul, have you collected all the materials that Master Allen needs?" The speaker was a boy of 11 or 12 years old with a head full of golden hair. "Master Yax, I'm very sorry. We have tried our best, but there are still many materials that cannot be collected," the knight said with his hand on his chest and bowed his head. "Okay, tell me what you're missing, and I'll tell Mr. Allen." Yax nodded without saying anything, signaling the convoy to follow, and then walked in first. In a greenhouse, made of crystal glass, Allen, wearing a white jumpsuit, was recording the various growth conditions of dragon scale grass. This dust-free suit covered Allen, leaving only his 2 eyes, to prevent the pollen of other demonized plants on his body from affecting the growth of other demonized plants. Allen has been here for 3 years. In the past 3 years, except for the first 3 months, when he killed 3 third-level wizard apprentices from the Four Towers Alliance, Allen has never left here. This valley is the place with the highest elemental energy content in the entire Salar region. Allen built a wizard tower here with the help of the Michelle family. Oh, it can't be said to be a wizard tower. It can only be said to be a tower where a wizard apprentice lives, because this wizard tower is too simple. The ground vein energy network, no. Element pool hub, no. Rune array, no. Tower spirit, no. Puppet guard, no. This is a wizard's residence that is extremely miserable and simple. However, considering the reality, all these can be tolerated. This greenhouse is the most important place in the wizard tower. Allen spent a lot of time to build a magic plant cultivation center. In the past few years, Allen has refined a lot of potions, and the raw materials are harvested in this cultivation center. This magic plant cultivation center is divided into several areas. Allen has combined a lot of modern planting techniques to reclassify magic plants into more than a dozen knowledge. Improved variety screening, seedling cultivation, improved variety hybridization, plant optimization method, and established a file for various magic plants, recording various information of magic plants. Through hybridization and breeding, and other artificial interventions, the magic plants grow faster and better. However, this series of technological reforms are all realized by the massive calculations of chips, but there are only a few kinds of results, and many others still need a lot of experiments. And Allen can grow a large number of magic plants here, still relying on guano stone. This guano stone found in the Black Forest is really useful. It not only provides various minerals and trace element needed for plant growth, but also provides some energy. These guano stones are the feces of demonized birds. When birds excrete, they also excrete some energy that cannot be digested in their bodies. Although this energy is not much, it is enough for the growth of demonized plants. The 200 square meter greenhouse is not very large. Many demonized plants are aggressive. Allen has set up spell runes around it, and various demonized plants are divided into distinct areas. After recording the data, Allen stood up and walked to the cultivation room next to it. Here are the seedlings of demonized plants cultivated. The suitable growth environment can increase the germination rate of demonized plants. Here, Allen has prepared a suitable nutrient solution after chip calculation. The demonized plants cultivated with nutrient solution have strong seedlings, are not prone to various diseases and pests, and are easy to survive. When they grow to the right size, these demonized plants will be transplanted outside. After the initial period of weakness, the survival rate of demonized plants has directly increased. This small greenhouse provides Allen with a large amount of raw materials. During this period, a lot of magic potions were sold through the Michelle family. Most of the powerful nobles in the kingdom of Orensa were born as wizards, and some wizard families also lived here. Allen's magic potions were very popular in the market. This kind of transaction not only earned thousands of magic stones, but also exchanged a lot of resources. The Michelle family also gained a lot of benefits. As for discovering Allen's secret, with the use of a lot of resources, Allen has now reached the peak of a 3rd level wizard apprentice. Even if he breaks through to become a formal wizard now, Allen has a 70% chance of it, but considering that the bloodline has not yet fully awakened, Allen is ready to polish it. After all, the rapid growth of mental power also caused the quality of his mental power to loosen, so Allen is going to spend some time training his mental power, and at the same time waiting for the first transition of the Red Dragon bloodline. By then, Allen's strength will be among the strong among the formal wizards, and there is no need to worry about mastering this advanced knowledge and being robbed. After checking the glass greenhouse, Allen walked out of the door. This greenhouse was built on the top floor of the wizard tower. No one could get close without Allen's permission. Although Allen did not create puppets to guard here, the wizard's means were enough to protect this place from being broken into. The various rune arrays engraved around it surrounded the place tightly. Without Allen's secret mark, he broke in privately. Various magic traps warmly welcomed this uninvited guest. After taking off the dust-free suit and putting it into the clean rune array, Allen walked out. A batch of supplies was delivered today, and Allen needed to take a look. Chapter 65 Demonic Plant Experiment 1. So, more than half of the things I asked for were not purchased? Allen said expressionlessly, putting down the silver cutlery in his hand, and wiping his hands with a napkin. Sir, I'm very sorry that I failed to complete the task you assigned me. Paul was shaking like a sieve, and sweating like a pulp. Allen looked at him and didn't make things difficult for him. After all, the things he asked for were really hard to buy. If it was in the academy, it would be okay. You could always collect them after spending some time. But there is no secret realm here, and you can only find them in dangerous places in the mountains and old forests. Okay, you go down. Allen waved his hand. Although he had expected it, he still had a glimmer of fantasy. Yes, sir. After saying that, he turned around and prepared to leave. Wait. Paul's body suddenly stiffened, and he turned around with a somewhat desperate expression. Just a black shadow suddenly flew over, and Paul subconsciously reached out to take it. This is a crystal test tube with a red liquid in it. This is your reward. Okay, you can go. After saying that, Allen waved his hand and stopped talking, picked up the cutlery, and continued to enjoy the food on the table. The potion just now was a body strengthening potion that Allen had made through a large amount of data. It can strengthen physical fitness, but many of them require extracts from magic plants. It is not precious to Allen. The wizard tower is not big. Lord Curry asked Allen to teach his grandson. This is the only child in their family who has wizard qualifications. Allen checked and found that he has level 3 qualifications, which is not good, but not bad. If it were not for the war in the past 3 years, he would have enrolled in school long ago. Allen did not accept this child as a disciple. Just kidding. The instructors of the Wizard Academy are at least formal wizards, but Allen readily agreed to teach him. Anyway, it doesn't take much time. During this period of time, Allen has been analyzing and perfecting the level 1 spell template. For this fireball spell, after the chip optimization, the fireball spell has been greatly different. Not only has the power increased a lot, but it will continue to burn after hitting. Allen is already very familiar with it, and the chip has simulated it hundreds of times in his mind. As for the advanced meditation method, the chip has analyzed it, but it is a long way to go to deduce a suitable advanced meditation method. The main reason is that there is too little information. If Allen now has hundreds of different advanced meditation methods, he will always deduce the appropriate one by spending time. After dinner, Allen spent an hour answering various questions that Adams had accumulated this week, and then patted his butt and went to the laboratory. The wizard tower is divided into 3 floors above ground. The underground floor is a dungeon and torture chamber, where some beasts are locked up. There are only some very weak demonized beasts. The first floor is a living room and storage room. Adam's room is also on the first floor. The second floor is Allen's laboratory and library. The library knowledge is just for show. All of Allen's information has been recorded by the chip. The library only has some mortal books and some wizard common sense. The bedroom is also here. As for the third floor, it is the greenhouse made by Allen. This greenhouse is because there is a crystal mine near Salar City, so it can use crystals on a large scale. This is the most important place in the entire wizard tower. Allen planted many magical plants with guano, and then he suddenly wanted to try grafting. At the beginning, he used ordinary plants, because although he knew the grafting technology in his previous life, he was not a fruit farmer, so he didn't know the key points of grafting. At the beginning, Allen used it many times. Some of them survived successfully, but the fruits obtained were not satisfactory. Most of them died or failed directly. After collecting a lot of information through the chip and optimizing it, Allen finally had a set of effective grafting methods for ordinary plants. With experience, Allen began to try to graft magical plants. At this time, Allen discovered that the genetic aggressiveness and exclusivity of magical plants were completely incomparable to ordinary plants. The test results of several magical plants used at the beginning were not good. The first one used was the magical thorn with a relatively tenacious vitality. This kind of magical plant has no economic value. It is a material for the entanglement spell often used by plant wizards. The only advantage is that it has strong vitality, low growth requirements, fast growth, and high plasticity. Allen planted many magic thorns in some loopholes in the valley defense. Strangers or animals approaching this kind of thing will be entangled by the steel-like thorns. It is a good defense measure. Then it was matched with a branch of blue crystal fruit for grafting. Blue crystal fruit is not only refreshing, but also can restore mana. It is a main material for mana awakening potion. However, the disadvantage is that it is a bit delicate and has weak disease resistance. Allen wants to graft a blue crystal fruit that is easy to plant and care for and has a high survival rate. First, use ice element to reduce the activity of the two plants, and then cut them separately. The magic thorns are cut directly on the main trunk, and the blue crystal fruit is cut on a branch. Then use a sharp knife to cut a groove on the magic thorns and sharpen the blue crystal fruit branches. Then dock the two magic plants. Then spray the prepared nutrient potion on the docking place. Finally, a birth-inducing spell was performed. The growth rate of the two plants was slightly accelerated. Soon, the two plants of different species were connected and soon became seamless. Allen specially marked out a small piece of land in the greenhouse and planted the grafted demonized plant in it. He used the chip to adjust the fertility of the land, added guano stone, and began to record data. On the first day, the place where the plant was grafted has begun to grow. On the second day, the outer skin has healed. On the third day, some withered blue crystal fruit branches and leaves began to turn green. On the fourth day, the branches and leaves of the blue crystal fruit have returned to the state before the grafting. On the fifth day, differentiation. New buds began to grow at the wound where the demonized thorns were cut, and there was no obvious change in the branches and leaves of the blue crystal fruit. On the sixth day. On the 18th day, the blue crystal fruit and the demonized thorns had a rejection reaction. Although the buds grown by the demonized thorns were artificially forcibly removed, and the ice element was used to reduce its activity, rejection still occurred. On the 22nd day, the rejection reaction intensified, and the two demonized plants began to interfere with each other and invade, competing for nutrients. On the 26th day, the rejection reaction continued to intensify. Various methods were used to suppress the activity of the two demonized plants, but they would reappear as soon as they started to grow. On the 30th day, the experiment failed. The blue crystal fruit was completely devoured. The demonized thorns expelled the parts that could not be devoured, and then continued to grow according to the original species. The blue crystal fruit completely withered. During the experiment, Allen discovered that the blue crystal fruit was completely unable to resist the demonized thorns. The activity of the demonized thorns was too strong. Although it was suppressed at the beginning, it would completely overwhelm the blue crystal fruit after a period of growth, and the experiment failed. Allen rubbed his temples, threw the experimental report aside, and thought of a solution with some headache. PS. 100 starting coins reward from book friend at 3fesk. Chapter 66 Demonic Plant Experiment 2. The experiment failed, but Allen did not give up. He selected several plants from all kinds of magic plants. This time, he did not use magic plants to graft each other. Allen used ordinary plants and magic plants to graft to observe which kind of magic plants was the least aggressive. A large amount of data was summarized and analyzed by the chip. After a week, all the magic plants grafted with ordinary plants grew back to their original appearance, while ordinary plants were killed without any resistance. The magic plant branches and leaves grafted with ordinary plants were not much better. The roots of ordinary plants could not absorb nutrients to supply the magic plants, and finally they withered and died. After spending a lot of time, and no experiment was successful, Allen changed his direction. Combining the knowledge of potion science, Allen found that stabilizers were needed in many magic potion preparations. Stabilizers can neutralize other materials in the potion and reduce the conflicts between potions. The most perfect situation is that all conflicts are offset without any side effects. This level of potion is a perfect potion. However, other wizards do not have chips to help scan, so it is very difficult to prepare a perfect potion, and Allen can now skillfully prepare a perfect potion. The price of the perfect potion is several times higher than that of the general quality potion. Allen will not sell it, but keep it for his own use. The most commonly used method of preparing the stabilizer is to use Hanaya grass and Kingling grass. The wizard's purification method is still quite primitive. It uses physical methods to process the potion, and then uses spells to filter and purify it. Although this method is effective, it is inevitably contaminated with element during the spell purification, so the stabilizer will be contaminated to a certain extent. Skilled pharmacists will use various methods to reduce the pollution to a controllable range. Allen made a simple centrifuge and used centrifuge extraction technology, a pure physical method. After preparing the stabilizer, Allen began to graft the magic plants again. This experiment finally yielded results. The longest survival lasted for 2 months. Although inhibitors were needed every day to suppress its activity, the magic plants after grafting had begun to fuse initially, which showed that grafting was feasible. With the initial results, Allen was shocked. If the grafting was successful, the output of many magic plants would increase sharply. While Allen was still researching, the 4-year Wizard War was finally coming to an end. Since the Five Rings Towers began to fight back, the Four Towers Alliance could not hold on. There were serious differences in the first place, but under the dual effects of interests and pressure, this group of people barely united. If they faced failure, they would collapse. The Five Rings Towers knew the details of these people very well, divided and disintegrated them, and lured them with one hand, and suppressed them with the other hand, and treated them differently. Soon, the Four Towers Alliance became precarious. Because the Five Rings Towers mainly attacked the Ghost Swamp, the Lava Tower and the Thorn Tower were under much less pressure, so contradictions emerged. The Ghost Tower felt that it was the worst and went to ask for help from the Lava Tower and the Thorn Tower, but they only sent a few marginal figures. It didn't work at all. In the end, the Ghost Swamp couldn't hold on and hurriedly asked for peace, and then joined the Five Rings Tower in a very servile manner, and beat the Black Crow Academy again, and then used the teleportation array to instantly teleport to the back of the Lava Tower and the Thorn Tower. Originally, they had carried out a space blockade in advance and reinforced the space around them, but they didn't expect that the Ghost Tower secretly left the dimensional anchor coordinates in its territory when the Four Towers Alliance was formed. The Five Rings Tower forcibly broke through the space barrier and descended behind the Lava Tower and the Thorn Tower, breaking through their defense line in one fell swoop. However, when the Five Rings Tower was about to annex the Lava Tower and the Thorn Tower, the Wizard Alliance intervened. When the Four Tower Alliance found that the Five Rings Tower was about to completely annex the Four Tower Alliance, they panicked. Now the Four Tower Alliance has been defeated one by one, and it is already meat on the chopping board, and it is powerless to resist. If they don't want to be annexed, they can only ask for help from the Wizard Alliance. Facing the Wizard Alliance, the Five Rings Tower is no match for it. Although it is very unwilling, it can only accept it. The final result is that the Four Tower Alliance gave up 1/3 of its resources. The Five Rings Tower got 2 of them, and the other was taken by the Wizard Alliance. The Wizard Alliance, which entered the scene last, got a lot of benefits just by showing its face. The large resource secret realm that triggered the war was also divided into 10 parts. The Five Rings Tower took 70% of the share, the Four Towers Alliance took 30% of the share, and the Wizard Alliance also wanted to get involved, but this time it was directly pushed back by the two sides. The war ended, and the two sides ceased fighting. Although the Five Rings Tower gained a lot of benefits, the losses were also not small. At the Five Rings Tower, several messenger wind crows flew out. One of them flew directly towards the direction of the Kingdom of Oransa. A few days later, a carriage entered the valley. "Hello, apprentice. This is your letter." In front of Allen was a wind crow as tall as a person. Lord Curry brought it here personally. This is a strange bird, and Allen also saw it for the first time. Strange Creatures records a creature called wind crows. Wind crows are very intelligent, and not much different from humans. They are born to use various wind element spells, and like to chat with humans. They are also loyal messengers. Most of the wind crows are chatterboxes. Adult wind crows have the level of formal wizards, but they are cheerful and will not attack humans. In ancient times, many wizard families would sign contracts with wind crows and use them to deliver messages. After all, communication crystals can only be used in pairs. There is no mobile company to carry out switch business here. Wizards cannot prepare dozens of communication crystals. In many cases, they still have to rely on wind crows to deliver messages. "My name is Piccolo. You have a nice place." The wind crow Piccolo flapped his wings and plopped on the sofa. This sofa was made by Allen according to the previous style. The fur on it is white bearskin, thick and soft. This wind crow plopped on it with a look of enjoyment. Allen opened the letter, perfunctorily said to the wind crow, and read the letter at a glance. After a long time, Alan put down the letter. Pico, the Academy won. Can we go back? Alan still couldn't believe what he saw in the letter. Although he knew that the Five Rings Tower would not lose, he never thought that the Five Rings Tower would push all the way and overturn the Four Towers Alliance. Yes, you need to go back as soon as possible. The Academy has entered a period of construction and development, which is very good for you. The Wind Crow raised one paw, leaned on the sofa and swayed, chattering about the environment here and praising it from time to time. Alan took out a plate of purple fruits from his pocket and put it on the table. In an instant, the Wind Crow lying on the sofa sat up and pecked at the purple fruits with its long beak while talking. Apprentice, you are simply amazing. You are the best I have ever seen. Oh, purple fruits, this is my favorite. Aha. Purple fruits are the favorite food of this kind of wind crow. Seeing this, Alan smiled slightly. Bick, I received the letter. I will set off to return to the Academy in 3 days. Aha. The wind crow that was eating purple fruits just flapped its wings to show that it knew and ignored Alan. P.S. Thank you 0000 for the 100 starting coins reward. Chapter 67 Homeward Journey. We have to go back to the Academy. We need to put these experiments aside for now. Alan walked into the laboratory and began to put things away. Because of the existence of the chip, there are not many books and papers, and they are all stored in Alan's mind. Alan did not plan to dismantle the greenhouse on the 3rd floor. However, all the magic plants inside had to be harvested. This was a huge fortune and could not be left to the Michelle family. The next day, Piccolo Wind Crow found Alan. Apprentice, I'm going to the next destination. Thank you for your purple fruit. This is a return gift for you. After saying that, a feather fell from its wings and floated into Alan's hands. This feather can perform a flying spell. It is much faster than the flying spells of those crappy wizards. Okay, goodbye. I wish you a safe journey. Without waiting for Alan's consent, he shook his wings and flew straight into the sky. Alan put away the feather and shouted to Wind Crow's back, then see you at the Academy. It took 3 days to put all the valuable things into the dimensional bag. As for the remaining furniture and some less valuable things, they were left here. Chip. Scan my physical fitness. Name. Allen Farkus. Strength 15.1. Agility 14.8. Constitution 16.2. Spirit 15.1. Mana 151. Status. Healthy. Bloodline not awakened. The first jump is about to begin. The previously done crossing button at the bottom is now bright. Alan checked and found that the system's crossing function was finally charged. However, after checking, Alan calmed down again. Because the system was severely damaged, the coordinates of all the previous worlds were lost. Alan's hope of returning to Earth to have a look was dashed. This crossing was random. Seeing this, he had to give up the idea. If he crossed to the abyss plane with his current strength, he would be looking for death. He could only wait until he had the strength. The bloodline was fully awakened. As long as the jump was successful, Alan would advance to a formal wizard. However, Alan planned to use the Azure Potion to impact the bottleneck of a formal wizard first, so the bloodline jump was to be carried out after that. Alan wanted to try whether the two advancement methods could be superimposed. After packing up, he threw the key to Len. Because of the Academy, I can't teach you the spell template, but soon there will be wizards recruiting people. I believe you will go to the Academy soon, so wait patiently. Patting Le's shoulder, Alan turned and left. A week later, and city, which is less than half the distance to the Academy, Alan is ready to rest in the city and continue to move forward. After a week of rushing, he has crossed half of the kingdom of Orensa. This city is the border, and there is no war. Alan doesn't have to hide his whereabouts along the way, so the speed is very fast. As long as there is a chance, Alan doesn't want to sleep in the wild. As a wizard, if he can't even maintain this little fun, it means that this wizard is a failure. He came to the best hotel to take a shower and have a beautiful dinner. The barbecue and mushroom soup here tasted good. After a night's rest, Alan set out again the next day with renewed energy. Huolala. The sky was dark, and the big raindrops fell, splashing countless water on the ground. Ta ta ta. A bay horse galloped on the road. The scenery on both sides quickly retreated, and the rain fell on the knight. But if you look closely, you will find that all the rain that approaches the knight will automatically deviate from the falling position. Although it rained heavily, the knight was not soaked by the rain at all. This knight was naturally Allen. Although he was a wizard, his strength was not enough to change the weather. There was no place to shelter from the rain in the wilderness, so Allen had to move forward in the rain. At this time, a flash of lightning flashed across the sky. It illuminated the somewhat dim world. In the light, Allen actually saw a figure flying in the air. There are really wizards who are not afraid of death. In this weather, they actually use flying magic to travel. It was the figure of a formal wizard. Judging from his dress, he was not from the surrounding wizard academies, but the war had been lifted, so Allen was not surprised. After taking a look, he continued on his way. However, the wizard in the air suddenly stopped, stood in the air, as if looking for something, and suddenly turned to Allen's direction, then looked very happy, and flew directly in Allen's direction. Allen had already walked far away, and the chip suddenly sounded an alarm. Ding. Host, please pay attention. There are dangerous people approaching. Dangerous people are approaching. Please be prepared, host. Allen turned around and saw the wizard behind him flying towards him at a very fast speed, and his target was himself. After seeing the wizard, Allen whipped his horsewhip and turned to escape. Although he didn't know what happened, Allen didn't think that being caught by a formal wizard would have a good result. The flying speed of a first level wizard is not very fast, so Allen ran at full speed, and the wizard couldn't catch up for a while. However, the horse's endurance is limited, and it is impossible to maintain a high speed all the time. Boy in front, stop. The wizard behind him shouted loudly when he saw Allen riding a horse. Allen turned a deaf ear. One hand began to prepare a spell. Boy, you can't run away. As long as you stop, I can promise not to pursue your unreasonableness just now. As long as you cooperate with one of my experiments, I will give you a large amount of magic stones. Did you hear me? Stop. The wizard chased after him and shouted angrily. Wind spell. Allen's finger flashed, and a magical power directly penetrated the chestnut horse's body. The speed of the horse suddenly increased, and the distance between them was getting closer and closer. As time went by, the wizard was even more angry when he saw Allen's speed suddenly increase. Boy, do you think you can run away? The power of wizards is beyond your imagination. He stopped in midair and stopped chasing. Instead, he took out a bottle of red test tube. The potion inside kept bubbling, which looked horrifying. The wizard looked up with a painful look on his face and drank it. He threw the test tube out with force and stared fiercely at the figure that was still running not far away. After a while, the wizard's expression became extremely distorted, as if he was enduring some great pain. Sweat kept flowing on his face, and his back began to bulge, getting higher and higher. Finally, he reached the limit. With a sizzling sound, the wizard's robe was torn, and a pair of dark red flesh wings appeared behind him. This unstable sub-dragon bloodline requires a huge price every time it is used, but it is all worth it. As long as we catch that kid, the unusually strong dragon bloodline aura on his body must be a pure-blooded dragon. As long as we get it, it will only be a matter of time before he becomes a level 3 wizard, not to mention a level 2 wizard. The wizard muttered to himself, and the severe red light became more and more vigorous. The middle-aged wizard with a pair of dragon wings growing out of his back adjusted his body and instantly flew towards Allen like an arrow from a bow. Boy, you can't run away. Chapter 68, Crossing. Please support with your recommendation votes. Close bracket. After running a long distance, as the chip reported that the distance was getting farther and farther, Allen breathed a sigh of relief. Looking back, he saw a figure in the air in the distance, motionless, and had turned into a black dot. He was relieved, but he did not dare to slow down at all. Although he did not know why the wizard stopped chasing, Allen did not dare to stop at all. It was still 3 days away from the academy. If he sped up and did not stop, Allen would be sure to arrive in one day. After this accident, Allen did not dare to stop at all and prepared to run all the way back to the academy. It was just a short while after he breathed a sigh of relief that the chip in his mind suddenly sounded an alarm, and this time it was stronger than the last time. Ding. Danger. Danger. There is a high energy reaction to kilometers behind you. Humanoid creatures are approaching rapidly. Please stay away immediately. Stay away immediately. Allen's hair stood up instantly, and when he looked back, he was even more shocked. He saw that the wizard just now suddenly had a pair of red flesh wings on his body and was rushing towards him. From the sky, the distance between the two began to shorten visibly. Beep. Danger. High energy creatures are 1800 meters away. Please move away as soon as possible. Beep. Distance is 1500 meters. It is expected to be caught up in 1 minute. Please move away as soon as possible. Allen was terrified when he saw the chip prompt, but the more dangerous the moment, the calmer he had to be. Speed, speed, speed up. Yes, feather, the feather of the wind crow. There is still a chance. Allen quickly opened the dimensional bag to look for the feather of the wind crow. Beep. Distance is 800 meters. It is expected to be caught up in 25 seconds. Please move away as soon as possible. Move away as soon as possible. Allen didn't have time to check and directly input the mana in his hand into the feather. He saw that the originally ordinary feathers emitted a faint light and floated up, and then instantly turned into a little starlight and entered Allen's body. Allen couldn't help but fly up, and then his mind moved, and his body flew out at a very fast speed, not slower than the figure behind him. The lightning speed made Allen unable to distinguish the surrounding scenery, and the chip no longer reminded him to shorten the distance. Allen breathed a sigh of relief. But this feather is only a disposable item after all, and there is still 1 day to go from here to the academy, so the temporary safety cannot last long. The green wind element on his body protected Allen, and he left quickly. The wizard behind him gnashed his teeth and chased him relentlessly. He never expected that this wizard apprentice was so fast that he couldn't catch up quickly, even when he used the dragon wing form. This wizard is called Deedon. He originally had a thin sub-dragon bloodline. Since he advanced to a formal wizard, he has been trying to deepen his bloodline by capturing sub-dragon beasts to purify his bloodline. However, dragon beasts are rare in this world, and their bloodlines are also mixed and thin. Until now, he has only barely used the dragon wing incarnation, and he has not awakened the dragon breath. This time, at a great cost, the wizard who found the astrology faction made a prophecy just to find a dragon creature with thick bloodline. The accuracy of the prediction of the astrology school was originally shockingly low, but he didn't expect it to succeed this time. This Iden wizard has been squatting here for a month. During this period, he has turned this area upside down and has not encountered a dragon beast. Just when he lost confidence and was about to leave, he sensed the breath of dragons. He originally had sub-dragon blood in his body. He felt even more oppressive when he encountered a higher level pure blood dragon blood. He was overjoyed and searched directly in the air. However, he did not expect that this was not a dragon beast, but a wizard apprentice. The wizard was ready to snatch it directly, ready to catch the apprentice and extract the blood. Unexpectedly, the apprentice was so vigilant that he sped up and fled as soon as he showed something wrong. However, after using the dragon wing form, the wizard was not worried that Allen could run away. Although it is unknown what magic props the apprentice used, this speed will definitely not last long. The wizard apprentice and the official wizard compete in endurance, and the result is definitely that the official wizard wins. The speed is not slow at all. Allen fell behind, and he looked back from time to time. Although the wizard in the distance did not close the distance, he did not fall behind. At this time, the power of the feathers had begun to weaken. After half an hour of flying, the light green light shield that maintained the body surface was already looming. Finally, the speed of the flying technique began to decrease. The wizard Eden in the distance saw that the speed of the boy in front of him began to slow down, and a sneer crossed his mouth. "Boy, aren't you very good at running? Why don't you run anymore? Are you out of energy? Ha ha ha." The wizard tore off his face and laughed wildly. From that expression, it was clear that Allen would definitely not have a good ending if he fell into his hands. Ding. High energy targets continue to approach. Please stay away from the host. The chip began to prompt frantically in his mind again. It's just that the power of the feathers has been exhausted and can no longer maintain high-speed flight. Looking at the figure getting closer and closer, Allen's heart slowly sank. Suddenly remembering that the energy required for the crossing some time ago had been fully charged, Allen was instantly full of hope. The chip opens the system crossing panel. Ding. The system crossing panel is open. The light blue panel on the retina was seen, and the crossing button was flashing. It can cross. Allen realized at this moment that the button was so cute. Chip. How long will it take to cross? Ding. It will take 0.001 seconds. Allen was relieved after getting the answer. Although crossing to an unknown world is also very dangerous, it is not as dangerous as being immediately extracted from the marrow, dug out of the heart, and dissected. Looking back, he saw the dragon-winged wizard who was less than 100 meters away. The scales on his flesh wings could be seen clearly at this time. Allen suddenly showed a mocking smile, and then fiercely gave middle finger. Although the wizard Eden didn't know what he meant when he saw this gesture, he knew from the mocking expression that it was definitely not a good thing. He was furious, but seeing that Allen was about to be caught, he forced himself to endure it. No wizard apprentice had ever despised a formal wizard like this. He had already thought about catching Allen and making him regret coming to this world. But Allen calmly adjusted his clothes and then shouted loudly, "Goodbye. I will be back." He silently said cross. In an instant, a bright light lit up from his mind and directly wrapped Allen's body and disappeared in front of the wizard Eden. The wizard Eden, who had just rushed to Allen, instantly passed Allen's original position and looked back to see no one. Then he released a series of spells like crazy, and his angry roar could be heard from miles away. However, Allen had already left this world. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, A New World. In the endless darkness, there was no distinction between up and down, left and right, and even the concept of time and space disappeared. Allen was in this space, with nothing around him, and the darkness was oppressive. After an unknown amount of time, a little light slowly rippled. A breath came out. Then the light spot instantly expanded, and completely swallowed Allen. The air was rotten, fishy, and filled with the smell of sulfur. Allen slowly opened his eyes. The sky was a little dim. He moved his body and felt a little sore. He looked around at the surrounding environment. There were strange rocks and potholes on the ground. There were no trees around, and it was extremely desolate. Not far away was a mountain that towered into the clouds. After feeling it, he found that the concentration of element around him was much higher than that of the academy. He snapped his right fingers and released a light spell. It seems that I'm lucky. It's the material plane, and the element are very active, so the difficulty of casting spells is reduced. No intelligent creatures are found around. Fortunately, it's not the abyss plane, otherwise it would be a waste. Chip. Scan the surrounding environment, collect information and compare it with the library information. Ding. The mission has been established, and the scan has begun. The soil under his feet showed an abnormal dark red color. Allen had never seen this kind of soil before, and the faint smell of sulfur in the air around him could not be found. Ding. The mission has been completed, and the current plane comparison is completed. The similarity of the abyss plane is 23%. The similarity of the emerald world is 5%. The similarity of the fairy world is 7%. And the similarity of the Farron plane is 40%. Looking at the data from the chip, Allen was a little confused. The plane he crossed this time should be a new plane, which is different from the known planes in the wizard world. The mountain wind was blowing wildly, and Allen looked around and saw a huge rock not far away. He blessed himself with a cat's grace, and with a few jumps, he climbed up the rock flexibly. Behind him was a tall mountain range that looked like the roof of the world, and in front of him was an endless wilderness. The sky had become grey and there was no sunlight. The mountain wind blew, and there was a smell of blood mixed with sulfur. Nothing valuable was found. The chip scan results came out. No intelligent life was found within a radius of 20 kilometers. Allen had a headache. He never thought that he would cross a desolate place in a plane. But it was good that the element concentration here had exceeded that of the academy. It was time for wizards to break through now. After jumping off the boulder, Allen checked the surrounding map scanned by the chip. There was a coal a few kilometers away from here. With a finger, Allen added the light body technique and ran to that place with a tiptoe. The coal was not big, with an open space of only a few hundred meters. He found a severely weathered stone wall, and the spiritual light in his hand flashed. Acid splashed, and the sound of sizzling continued to sound. A hole was corroded in the mountain wall, and then he used the cross sword to smash the severely corroded rock. It took nearly a day to finally dig out a cave. The cave was not big, only a dozen square meters, but it was a good place to break through. Then I found a piece of rock of suitable size to block the entrance of the cave, left a few ventilation holes in a hidden place, arranged a layer of rune array around it, returned to the cave, and after getting into position, prepared to break through to the official wizard. After closing his eyes and adjusting his state, he waited until his body returned to the best moment and his mood calmed down. Allen reached out and took out a crystal test tube. The crystal test tube contained a blue potion, which was full of starlight. The starlight spread and then shrank, as if this liquid had life. This was a blue potion, which could play a good auxiliary role in the process of being promoted to a formal wizard. It had been stored in Allen's dimensional bag for more than 3 years. Chip. Call out the fireball spell adjusted to the optimal structure. He gave an order to the chip in his heart. Ding. The optimal structure has been called out. Compared with the original version, the stability of the improved version has increased by 21.7% and the power has increased by 73%. Data flashed in front of Allen's eyes. Let's get started. Feeling the spell structure that had been deduced countless times in his mind, Allen slowly took a deep breath with a determined look on his face. Assisted mode activated. Allen drank the azure potion in his hand in one gulp, closed his eyes directly, and entered a deep state of meditation. After drinking the azure potion, Allen felt a burning sensation in his body, and at the same time, a tingling pain deep into the bone marrow gradually appeared. The body temperature rises, the metabolism intensifies, and the upper limit of mental power begins to increase. The chip in his mind faithfully reported Allen's situation, but Allen no longer had the mind to care about it. The mental power in the sea of consciousness has begun to grow continuously. After Allen's will appeared, the originally dim sea of consciousness was illuminated by an inexplicable force. Allen had a feeling that he was a god here. This was his soul world. Allen was not confused by this false power. He concentrated his energy, and a large amount of mental power began to gather quickly like lake water. Gradually, it changed from a small puddle to a small pool, then to a small lake, and finally to a large lake. Under the catalysis of the azure potion, Allen's potential burst out instantly, and a steady stream of mental power gathered. The soul felt a burst of joy, a feeling of breaking free from the shackles. This state fascinated him, but at the same time he was more vigilant, because these were all powerful for a moment. If he indulged in it, his promotion would be a failure. Chip. Assist in constructing the spell template of Fireball. Allen resisted the desire to indulge and began to construct the spell template. A three-dimensional image began to emerge in the sea of consciousness. Allen began to draw out mental power to follow the chip to build. Many third-level wizard apprentices failed to become formal wizards because of this. If the secondary spell template is to construct runes one by one out of thin air and then connect the nodes, then the first level spell template is to construct a three-dimensional animation out of thin air. Its difficulty has increased several times. Moreover, each construction will consume mental power, and now the mental power has begun to slow down the growth rate. If the number of failures increases, it is likely that the mental power will not be enough to construct a spell template in the end. You can only accept failure, and every time you fail to advance, your vitality will be greatly damaged, and you need to spend a lot of time to recover your vitality. However, even if you recover, you can't reach the original state, so the first breakthrough probability is the highest. In the sea of consciousness, the dim spiritual sea gradually brightened. Under the effect of mental power, a little light began to light up, and then began to gradually expand, and the mental power was slowly consumed. In the light group are complex runes, interconnected, and finally brighter and brighter, finally illuminating the entire sea of consciousness, and finally the light disappeared, and a complex structure template stood quietly in the sea of consciousness, emitting a faint glow. Done. After the last node was completed, the template emitted a strong light, and then slowly dimmed, and finally only flickered in the sea of consciousness. Chapter 70 Advanced. The spell template was successfully constructed, and mental power was slowly injected into the template, and began to continuously strengthen and reinforce the entire template. After the template was successfully constructed, the mental power also underwent some wonderful changes. Allen's entire soul has undergone a transformation. Slowly opening his eyes, the dim cave seemed to suddenly become bright, and then slowly faded away, and a pair of eyes flashed in the darkness. If someone looked directly at these eyes, they would be instantly addicted. This is a manifestation of the overflow of mental power that has not been perfectly controlled. Allen stood up with a happy face, and the mental power instantly got rid of the shackles of the flesh and directly lifted Allen up. Feeling the mental power in the sea of consciousness that seemed to be substantial, Allen's eyes were full of joy. Formal wizard. A deep sigh. At this time, a sense of hunger emerged, and Allen's body sent all kinds of feelings: fatigue, hunger, soreness, and so on. Name: Allen Farkus. Strength 15.1, Agility 14.8, Constitution 16.2, Spirit 17.8, Mana 356, Status, Healthy, Bloodline not awakened. In front of him, the familiar attribute panel appeared again, which gave Allen a full understanding. Although the mental power has not increased significantly, it has broken through the bottleneck. This is only temporary. As the soul transforms, the body will also transform in a short time. Allen took out the food that had been prepared long ago and began to wolf it down. The energy consumed for promotion is very large. Allen needs to replenish it as soon as possible. At the same time, after becoming a formal wizard this time, Allen has discovered that the awakening of the bloodline has reached the end and will soon enter the final stage. Allen needs to replenish it as soon as possible and then continue the bloodline transition. Allen's stomach is like a bottomless pit. The food piled up in front of him was eaten by Allen in 2 or 3 bites and disappeared visibly. After finally eating most of the prepared food, Allen slowly exhaled. His stomach moved slightly, and the food was quickly digested and then converted into energy. Just after eating, Allen felt sleepy. His eyelids became heavier and heavier. Finally, he could no longer hold on. He leaned and fell asleep on the platform. As Allen fell asleep, the elemental energy around him began to be slowly absorbed. With the rhythm of his breathing, the elemental energy also followed this rhythm. Gradually, the elemental energy became thicker and even colorful. Various elements were mixed together. Finally, Allen's figure was completely covered. The whole cave was full of elemental particles of various colors. Allen lay quietly on the platform, unaware of it. Time passed by, and pictures appeared in Allen's dream. In the dream, he turned into a young red dragon, and then learned some magic knowledge of the dragon clan, and also learned dragon language. After learning these, Allen fell into a coma again. This time he seemed to have returned to the mother body. Warm and comfortable, it makes people nostalgic. Just as Allen fell asleep, elemental energy continued to pour in. His physical fitness began to improve continuously. His muscles became tighter, his bones became stronger, and even his mental strength began to slowly improve. After an unknown amount of time, the elemental energy that filled the entire cave began to slowly fade away, and the scene in the cave became clearer and clearer. A figure began to appear in the colorful elemental energy. Finally, all the elemental energy dissipated. Allen's figure finally appeared there. There was even some transparent liquid at the corners of Allen's mouth. While he was sleeping, he had an extremely satisfied expression on his face, and he smacked his lips from time to time. If you look closely at this time, you will find that Allen's body under this wizard robe is extremely strong. He is full of explosive power. Suddenly, Allen, who was sleeping, turned over and fell directly off the platform. Allen, who fell to the ground, woke up instantly. I actually fell asleep just now. What's going on? Is it because I was too tired to break through to the official wizard? But I wasn't sleepy at the time. How could I suddenly fall asleep? Could it be those foods? Allen was in doubt. Chip. Scan my body status. Ding. Start scanning. Mission accomplished. Name: Allen Farkus. Strength 20.8, Agility 20.1, Constitution 21.2, Spirit 22.8, mana 456, status, healthy, blood awakening, first transition completed. Seeing the attribute panel finally showing that the blood had awakened and the transition was completed, Allen was stunned for a moment. He slept for no apparent reason. After waking up, his attributes had made a qualitative leap again, and the blood had also completed the transition. Allen was confused. Chip, retrieve the data when I was sleeping. Ding. The data has been retrieved. Countless numbers kept appearing on Allen's retina. After a while, Allen slowly breathed a sigh of relief. It turns out that every time dragons evolve and grow, they need a long period of sleep, and Allen's blood awakening also follows this rule. However, although it feels great to be able to advance after a sleep, there are no signs before falling asleep, so it can only be roughly estimated. If you fall asleep in a dangerous place, it will be fun. He secretly reminded himself that he must find a safe place in advance for the next advancement. At this time, his stomach cramped again, and a maddening feeling of hunger emerged. Fuck, here it comes again. Allen hurriedly took out the remaining food from the dimensional bag, and then began to eat and drink. He ate all the remaining food until the hunger gradually disappeared. He exhaled slowly, and Allen couldn't help but tremble slightly. After eating, he suddenly seemed to be unable to hold back, and sneezed on the spot. Whoosh! A 50 centimeter long flame spurted out of Allen's mouth. It looked like the dragon's breath of a young dragon. Allen sprayed for nearly 5 seconds before stopping. The stones on the ground in front of him had already shown signs of melting. Allen was surprised. This is dragon's breath. I'm lucky to have awakened the dragon's breath. Allen thought about it in his mind, and then exhaled suddenly according to the feeling just now. Whoosh! A flame several times more powerful than before spurted out from the air in front of Allen, and the whole cave turned into a sea of fire in an instant. Seeing so many flames, Allen quickly stopped spitting. In this instant, the air in the cave burned out. After a while, the air returned to normal, and the whole cave showed signs of melting. Chip. Calculate the power of the dragon's breath just now. Ding. The task has been established, and the calculation is completed. Dragon's breath spit. Attack range. 10 meters in front of the cone range. The maximum center damage is 150. The minimum edge damage is 90. And the calculation time lasts 7 to 11 seconds. Seeing the results of the chip measurement, Allen was excited. This dragon's breath spit is a killer move, with high damage, wide range, and sudden use. Others have no time to react. After some comparison, Allen's strength is much stronger than that of an ordinary formal wizard. Formal spells. The improved fireball spell can be said to be the strongest attack spell at the first level, far exceeding the physical fitness of the Great Knight and the strong anti-magic attribute. Allen is now able to suppress a formal wizard without using spells. Chapter 71 Demon. Finally, after some inspection, Allen awakened 3 talents this time. One is the Breath of Dragon, the other is the Dragon Scale Armor, and the other is the Dragon Power. His skin has become extremely tough now, surpassing the defense of leather armor in normal state, and the elemental resistance is even more amazing. When it is activated, virtual scales will appear on the surface of the body, and the defense is comparable to a piece of enchanted fine steel armor, and the elemental resistance is greatly improved. After the calculation of the chip, all secondary spells are invalid, and even the first level spells will be offset by most. At this time, he has a great advantage, no matter what kind of enemy he faces. The power of dragon directly increases Allen's physical fitness, which has been reflected. As for the dragon wing form, it did not awaken this time, but Allen was not disappointed. The dragon wing form will awaken in the next advanced awakening. The sub-dragon blood warlock who chased Allen was able to awaken the dragon wing, because he inherited only the dragon wing bloodline, and did not inherit the dragon breath or dragon scale leather armor at all. After the promotion was completed, Allen did not want to stay for a moment. Looking at the time, Allen had been sleeping in this cave for a month. With a slight force on his palm, the boulder that blocked the cave entrance was pushed open. A sturdy figure appeared at the entrance of the cave, stretched hard, and Allen walked out, but the sky was still grey and gloomy, which made people feel very depressed. There was still a smell of sulfur in the air, and there was no sign of any life activity around. Allen looked around, and there was no difference from when he just came through. After tidying up the wizard robe that was one size smaller, Allen climbed onto a nearby boulder and looked into the distance. There were huge pits everywhere in the distance of the wilderness. Some strange trees stood obliquely, and there were traces of flames in many places. The high mountain behind him was like a high wall, blocking him tightly. After a few glances, he used the chip to calculate the height, which was at least tens of thousands of meters high. Looking at the endless mountains, Allen also had a headache. Such a high mountain can be crossed, but there must be high mountains behind the mountains. It is very difficult to flip through. After checking the food, there were only a few pieces of barbecue left, which was not enough to support the consumption of crossing the mountain. Allen had no choice but to walk along the mountain range, wanting to see if there was a canyon that he could cross. Along the way, he saw no one, but after a while, Allen finally distinguished the position of the sun based on the light. Walking along the mountain range, Allen did not find anything, but found many corpses on the ground. Most of the corpses had turned into bones, and the trees had died. Occasionally, there were some remains of buildings that had been severely damaged. There were many huge pits on the ground, which looked like meteorites, but the range was much smaller, most of which were only a dozen meters. This world felt like it had entered the end of the world, and it was dead. Bones were exposed in the wild. Allen would always hear a click from time to time when he stepped on it, and then he found that a small piece of pale bones was raised in the soil, and the other end had been broken by his foot. After checking these bones, most of them were human, and occasionally there were some elves and dwarves. But they should be in the same camp, because they were not entangled together, but consistent. There were also some corpses that looked like orcs, but the bones were abnormally strong. Allen had seen orcs in the wizarding world and even dissected orc corpses in anatomy class. He clearly remembered that, although orcs were stronger than humans, they were not exaggerated. If the strength of a normal person is 1, then the maximum strength of an ordinary orc is 1.5. After Allen calculated, he found that the strength of the bones here was at least 3, which was already the level of an apprentice knight. Continuing forward, a sad scene appeared in front of Allen. On the dark red land, countless bones were lying in all directions. The bones were exposed in the wilderness and had begun to weather. There were countless swords scattered around. When I picked them up, most of them had rusted. With a light flick, they broke into several sections with a clang. The majority of the bones were humans, and the other group was orcs. There were also many strange bones among these orcs. Most of these bones had sharp bone spurs on the joints. Many limbs grew into weapon shapes. Some were as tall as dwarves, and some had a pair of wings behind them. The bones were dark red, and a sulfur smell filled the nose. Chip. Scan and compare. Although he already had a guess in his mind, Allen still wanted to compare it again. Ding. The task has been established. Scanning and starting to compare data. Data comparison completed. Identified. Lesser demon, claw demon, little demon, fallen demon, abyss horn demon, succubus. The chip confirmed Allen's guess. Those fighting against humans, elves, and dwarves are demons, and the lower orcs should be the abyss orcs corrupted by the abyss. This world has been targeted by the abyss. In the library of the Five Rings Tower, there are many records about the abyss. The abyss is also known as the bottomless abyss, because no one knows how many layers the abyss has. According to the information we have learned so far, we only know that there are 33 layers of the abyss, and the rest are unknown. And there are countless demons in each layer of the abyss. These demons are chaotic and crazy, and have no humanity. The weak ones, such as fallen demon and lesser demon, can be killed by a farmer after training and equipping weapons, and many wizards are not opponents of the higher level demons, and the best among them are even legendary. Although most of these demons are brain dead, killing each other, and full of desire for destruction, their number is like locusts, and there is a demon lord in each layer of the abyss. The strength of the demon lords is at least the mid-level legend, and many powerful demon lords are comparable to the power of gods. They want to invade the material plane all the time. Once they have the chance, they will rush into the material plane frantically, destroy the entire world, and finally drag this world into the abyss. So many layers of the abyss may have been a beautiful and rich material plane in the early days. The library has highlighted in the data recording the abyss that once demons are found in the material plane, no matter what the cost, they must be eliminated. There are so many demons in this world, it is likely that the abyss has begun to invade this world. In the distance, a person wearing armor has turned into a skeleton. The knight's sword in his hand deeply pierces an abyss-horned demon, and the two corpses are tightly pressed together. There was an inscription on the knight's sword. Although it had evolved, Allen still recognized that it was a variant of the ancient Sith language, faith and will, the unyielding fighting spirit. This was the knight's heirloom sword. Its owner was likely a strong man who surpassed the great knight. He did not retreat a single step until the last moment of the battle, but died together with the high-level demon. Allen was in a low mood. With a snap of his fingers, he manipulated the wizard's hand and dug a small grave not far from the battlefield to bury the brave knight. There was a lonely tomb in the wilderness. In front of the tomb, a knight's sword was quietly inserted into the ground, as if silently telling something. Chapter 72 Winged Demon. In the desolate wilderness, the dark red earth. Suddenly, there was an explosion in the distance, and the light dissipated. A large pit with a diameter of several meters appeared in front of us, and there were scattered dark red limbs around. Judging from their appearance and strong sulfur smell, these were all demons. The smoke and dust dissipated, and a strong figure slowly appeared, holding a cross sword in one hand and a fireball in the other hand. Seeing that some demons were still alive, he raised his hand lightly, and the fireball instantly engulfed them. Although the abyss demons have a high resistance to fire, these are only inferior demons and fallen demons, and they can't resist fire elemental magic at all. Only by becoming a beta flame demon can you be immune to most fire spells. These low-level demons are really poor. Since they came here from the abyss, they don't even bring any local specialties. A group of dozens of demons can't even get a kilogram of abyss iron on them. While collecting supplies, Allen complained about the stinginess of these demons. They have been walking along the mountains for 2 days. Since passing the ancient battlefield, Allen has been encountering demons. When these demons saw Allen, they rushed up in a hurry. Sometimes there were a few, sometimes there were dozens. Allen had killed hundreds of low-level demons in a day. After killing this group of demons, he saw that the sky was getting dark, so he prepared to find a place to spend the night. The wasteland at night was even quieter, with only the sound of the wind. Allen found a stone wall, gathered the surrounding corpses and buried them, and used the earth wall technique to seal the other side, forming a small shelter. He collected the dead trees and lit a bonfire. In the dark night, this small world appeared a little warm. He took out a piece of barbecue, stuck it on the cross sword, and put it on the fire to bake. This was the last bit of food. I didn't expect this place to be so desolate. Allen walked nearly 200 miles during the day and found no signs of life. The only ones who could move were those demons. It was as if all the vitality of this land had been drained away. I didn't know what was hidden in the dark night. Allen suddenly froze, and his hand that was turning the barbecue paused for a moment and then continued to turn it. But there were constant alarm sounds in his mind. Beep. A flying creature is detected approaching 1032.8 meters away from the host, and the energy intensity is at the level of a formal wizard. Beep. The target distance is 900 meters. Beep. The target distance is 500 meters. Allen ate the barbecue slowly, but his mind was always paying attention to the movement in the air. It was the sound of the wind, and no other sound came. Finally, when the flying object approached 50 meters, Allen's mental power finally sensed it. After putting away the barbecue and pretending to be defenseless, Allen inserted the cross sword next to the campfire and began to close his eyes to rest. In the darkness, a pair of blood-red eyes were full of insidious cunning, crazy and violent. A little firelight was reflected in the pupils. Seeing that the humans next to the campfire had rested, he flapped his wings vigorously, and his huge body swooped down like a hawk. At the moment of its action, Allen opened his eyes instantly and threw out the spells that had been prepared for a long time. Flash. The dark night was instantly pierced by this bright light. Allen, who had expected it, tilted his head and didn't look at the light. The cross sword inserted beside him had already appeared in his hand. He predicted the position in advance, slashed upward fiercely, and then turned over to avoid it. The cross sword cut into a layer of tough skin, and then followed the direction of the body and slashed hard. A smell full of blood and sulfur filled the surroundings, and the flying blood corroded the surrounding land. A large group of figures slammed into the ground fiercely. Allen's previous move directly pierced one of its flesh wings. At this time, with the help of the firelight, it was clear that this was a creature with flesh wings, scales all over the body, and two goat-like curved horns on its head. Allen didn't give it a chance. While its eyes couldn't see, he hit it hard and fell to the ground. He couldn't get up for a while and rushed up directly. The sharpness given by the magic weapon did not disappoint Allen. With a sword, he cut off nearly half of the flesh wing on the other side, completely abolished the demon's flying ability. Turning over to avoid the huge claws, the demon had barely recovered his vision at this time. He kept yelling in a language that Allen couldn't understand. His blood-red eyes were full of madness. The demon stood up and was more than 2 meters and 5 meters tall. He had 2 legs with reversed joints and a pair of cow hooves under his feet. He had sharp claws on his hands and a ferocious face. This was a winged demon. According to the book Species of Demons, this was a common mid-level demon in hell. It usually served as a centurion in the demon army and there were a huge number of them. Seeing Allen standing not far away with a sword in his hand, the winged demon rushed over without thinking. The demon's IQ was really not good. He was discovered when he attacked by sneaking, and he fought back. Now he didn't run away, but rushed over instead. It was really chaotic and funny. Although he complained in his heart, his hands were not slow at all. Allen didn't dodge at all, and went straight up. He slashed at its neck with a sword. With a clang sound like a metal collision, the winged demon's rushing figure stopped directly, and Allen's long sword was blocked by 2 sharp claws. There were deep sword marks on the part where the claws touched. Now, Allen's eyes moved slightly, and his mouth bulged. Ha! Dragon breath spewed out! Exclamation mark. Instantly a column of fire gushed out of Allen's mouth, and the dark red magic flame instantly wrapped up the winged demon. Although demons are born with weak flame resistance, they still cannot resist the damage of dragon breath. The scorching dragon breath burned it into a human-shaped torch. The winged demon wanted to pounce on Allen frantically. The fierce flames burned, and the winged demon screamed wildly. Allen dodged and swung the cross sword. Go to hell. The sharp sword swept past with a compelling momentum. Swordsmanship decapitation with the power of the body's rotation. The cross sword suddenly swept past, and a sword light flashed. The winged demon with wings on its back fell to the ground. The hideous head fell beside the campfire, and the corrosive blood sprayed all over the ground. The sizzling sound continued to ring. The tall body fell to the ground with a bang. The dragon breath flame had slowly extinguished, and the dark red blood slowly flowed out. Coming to the campfire, he used a cross sword to split the head of the winged demon. Resisting his nausea, Allen put his palm deep into the demon's brain to explore, and after a while he took out a grey crystal the size of a fingernail. Sure enough, there is a soul crystal in the head of this intermediary demon. Allen looked at the grey translucent crystal in his hand with a happy face. Soul crystals have many uses. The most common use is to make advanced puppets. Ordinary puppets do not require much intelligence and belong to mass production. Advanced puppets require higher intelligence. Soul crystals can be used to make puppet cores. Of course, in the abyss plane, this kind of soul crystal is currency. Whether it is a demon or a devil, there is always as much as possible for this kind of soul crystal. P.S. Thank you book friend Zion for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thank you Xiao Juhuateng for 100 starting coins and Kyanshan for 100 starting coins. Chapter 73, Sneak Attack. Beep. Host, please pay attention. A large number of life forms have appeared within 1 kilometer around you. Beep. Warning. Warning. A large number of high energy reactions have appeared around you. Please evacuate. Host. Just as Allen was checking the soul crystal, the chip suddenly issued a warning. A light blue map appeared directly on the retina. On the map with a radius of 1 kilometer centered on Allen, many light spots appeared densely. After a rough calculation, there were hundreds of them, and there were 7 or 8 light spots that were obviously one size larger. Allen felt his scalp tingling when he saw the dense light spots. Although those low-level demons were cannon fodder, those 7 or 8 bright spots were obviously mid-level demons. Dark vision, a flash of light flashed, and some light appeared in Allen's eyes. The world turned directly black and white, and the dark wilderness was clearly visible. Densely packed sinking demons, inferior demons, and cowardly demons ran towards here. Several tall figures were berserker demons, claw demons and other demons. There were also 2 winged demons in the air that were also speeding over. Allen didn't have time to think about it. He grabbed the cross sword with one hand and ran directly to the mountains behind him. Being surrounded by so many demons on the plain, there was no chance of winning. With so many demons, it was impossible to break through. He could only occupy favorable terrain and slowly consume them. Kill these final intermediate demons, and the rest were cannon fodder. Allen soon ran to the foot of the mountain and quickly occupied a high terrain. Looking back, the 2 winged demons were very close. Stunned, the 2 winged demons paused, pounced directly from the air, and then stabilized their bodies in midair. The resistance of intermediate demons was very high, and the effect of secondary magic was already very small. But this was enough. Taking advantage of the moment when the 2 winged demons lost control, Allen rose from the ground. The sharp sword in his hand brought a glimmer of light and instantly cut a big hole in the flesh wings of the 2 winged demons. Then he performed a feather falling spell and landed on the mountain wall. The 2 winged demons could no longer stabilize their bodies and fell crookedly on the rocks, and their bodies rolled far away under the action of inertia. With various auxiliary states, Allen's figure was even faster, and he rushed to a closer winged demon in an instant. Opportunity. His eyes lit up, and his figure did not hesitate. Sword dart whirlwind slash. The winged demon who had just stood up had no time to react, and a big hole was torn in his waist in an instant, and dark red blood gushed out. Sword dart impact. The figure did not stop at all, and a collision knocked the winged demon back, and the winged demon flew backwards instantly, as if it was hit by a heavy hammer. Allen rushed up immediately, and ignored the other demon who rushed up. It is better to break 1 finger than to hurt 10 fingers. Allen still understands this principle. A flash of light flashed on his body. Dragon scale armor. A layer of scales appeared on Allen's body. He resisted the huge claws of the winged demon. The hard claws crushed the scales and grabbed Allen. The grey wizard robe instantly turned into flying butterflies and was completely torn apart, revealing the samurai clothes inside. Scratches appeared on Allen's body. A burst of burning pain did not make Allen deviate from his goal. The sharp sword in his hand did not tremble at all. Die. Allen's muscles bulged, and a sword light swung out fiercely. Sword dart decapitation. The sharp sword light with suffocating wind pressure instantly passed through the still dizzy winged demon. A flash of light passed by, and the huge demon head soared into the sky. Dark red blood splashed and ripped on his body, sizzling, and many small holes appeared on his clothes in a short while. Without stopping, he kicked out another winged demon following closely behind him. Allen did not slow down and rushed forward. Seeing Allen rushing over, he opened his mouth and spit out a sentence of abyss and amp %#. In an instant, an orange-red fireball hit Allen directly. There was no time to dodge, and the scales on Allen's body instantly emerged. The dark red scales seemed to be real. The orange-red fireball instantly hit his chest, and his whole body was instantly covered by flames. The winged demon laughed wildly. Just as it laughed, a sword light instantly illuminated its eyes. Let's fight. Allen's eyes flashed. Swordsmanship thrust. Allen did not stop at all. After breaking through the flames, the flame resistance of the red dragon bloodline prevented Allen from receiving much damage. Instantly slowing down to the highest speed, the cross sword turned into a cold light, instantly piercing the chest of the winged demon and deeply piercing the heart. Then he swung his arm hard, and the winged demon, which was more than 2 meters tall, was thrown far away. The dark red blood dyed the surrounding ground red. The winged demon turned over several times and stopped moving. A strong smell of blood and sulfur filled his nose. After taking a breath, Allen's chest was like 2 broken bellows wheezing, and it took more than 10 seconds to recover. The continuous bursts made Allen consume a lot of physical strength, and he took the time to recover, while the demons were not close. The intense breathing made his blood flow rapidly, and the strength in his body recovered quickly. He kept calculating the next battle in his mind. The cannon fodder low-level demons are not a concern. As long as the mid-level demons are killed, without the suppression of the superiors, this group of weak and fearful demons will collapse without a fight. His eyes flickered slightly, and he looked up at the tall berserkers and claw demons. After solving the most threatening winged demons, there were still 6 of them. He calculated the distance and said silently in his mind, "Chip, turn on the auxiliary combat mode." Ding. The auxiliary combat mode is turned on. A blue screen appeared in front of Allen's eyes in an instant, and the chip listed all the environmental factors around. The fire element in his hand quickly gathered, and the chip marked the berserker running in the front. This berserker was sturdy, with a pair of horns on his head, pointed ears, and a bone hammer covered with flesh and blood in his hand, with hideous bone spurs on it. A pair of reverse-jointed sheep hooves, covered with dark red scales. Fireball spell ready, wind speed adjusted, angle upward 18 degrees, release. Instantly, a huge fireball flew out with a whistling sound, drawing a beautiful arc in the air and instantly enveloping the rushing berserker. The huge aura exploded, creating a large pit in the ground within a radius of 5 meters around it, and several cowardly demons around it were instantly blown to pieces. The berserker in the middle of the explosion suffered heavy damage. When the smoke and dust cleared, a tattered half of its body appeared in the pit, with a large hole in its chest, dark red blood splattered, and its heart and sternum were all blown to pieces. This berserker couldn't be deader. The improved and optimized fireball spell was indeed powerful, and it eliminated this mid-level demon with strong spell resistance with just one blow. Chapter 74 Death Knight. After dealing with a berserker, the power of the fireball did not scare these demons. Instead, they sped up and rushed towards the hillside where Allen was. Several fallen demons who were so scared that they wanted to retreat and escape had just run a few steps when they were thrown a bone hammer by another berserker and instantly smashed into a pile of rotten meat. The remaining low-level cannon fodders no longer dared to run away. They fired fireballs in their hands one after another. However, these demons finally got smart and used other low-level demons as meat shields. Although the low-level cannon fodder suffered heavy casualties, several mid-level demons did not lose any personnel. Seeing that those mid-level demons were not eliminated, Allen decisively stopped casting spells. After all, using a first-level spell to fight low-level demons was a waste of talent. Looking at the low-level demons climbing all over the hillside, Allen curled his lips and calculated the distance. He turned his palm up, and a piece of grease appeared. Then a flash of inspiration came, and the sloping hillside became smooth and greasy. Those cannon fodders who were climbing fell down instantly, and rolled down from the hillside like rolling gourds. At this moment, hundreds of low-level demons all rolled down, and the rest of those who did not step on the grease were also hit by the demons rolling down from above. Wizards have never only known how to use powerful spells to clean the ground. Taking advantage of the terrain, a secondary spell easily solved all the cannon fodder. For a while, the hillside was full of rolling figures. Only a few intermediate demons were left. These intermediate demons had used their powerful strength to smash the rocks on the ground at the moment of falling. They barely stood firm and did not fall down. Allen would not miss this good opportunity. A huge fireball gathered in his hand in an instant, and the orange-red aura flashed and instantly hit a claw demon who had just stood firm. The flame aura instantly wrapped the claw demon, and the claw demon didn't even hum, and a big hole was blown out of his chest. His body was blown away like a rag doll, and then fell to the ground with a bang, and then rolled down the hillside. Sparks from the explosion splashed onto the grease on the ground, and the grease with accelerant instantly ignited a raging fire. Although the demons wrapped in flames were burned in a mess, they kept yelling in the abyssal language. But in fact, they were not hurt. The power of these flames was only 10 scales, which did not exceed the magic resistance of the demons. Seeing the poor acting skills of these demons, Allen did not relax at all. With the remaining 5 demons coming up together, Allen was not sure of winning. Seeing these acting schools rolling and approaching, pretending to be burned by the flames and struggling everywhere, Allen prepared a fireball and smashed it directly at the nearest berserker. This berserker, who thought he had superb acting skills, had no chance to react at all, and was instantly sent back to his hometown by Allen. Seeing that they did not deceive Allen, the other intermediate demons jumped up from the ground in an instant. They roared and rushed towards Allen. Allen only had time to send away one demon, and was surrounded by the remaining 3 demons. Allen smiled slightly, and stepped back slightly. Grease spell, then he released a feather falling spell, whirlwind spell with a tap of his toes. Allen had already avoided the 3 mid-level demons' capture, but the grease spell was directly ignited by the demons who had been prepared in advance, and did not let them slip. The spiritual light in his hands kept flashing, the elegance of a cat, the toughness of a bear, the dragon scale leather armor, the magic weapon, a series of auxiliary states, were applied to Allen. As soon as he landed, 3 demons rushed over. The angry demons could no longer bear it, and must tear this hateful spellcaster to pieces. As they got closer and closer, the berserker had already thought about it. After killing this spellcaster, he must grab the white and tender thigh. The spellcaster's meat is tender and fresh. Compared with the leathery muscles of those warriors, the spellcaster's is completely smooth and elastic. After a while, his hands and feet must be quick, and the 2 idiots next to him can't get ahead. By the way, the most delicious thing is the soul. The soul of the spellcaster is a good thing. Just when these demons were thinking about how to deal with Allen, they had already rushed in front of Allen, and a dazzling light suddenly lit up. Flash magic, several demons were blinded, and the cold light of the sword in Allen's hand was dazzling. The cross sword with the magic weapon was extremely sharp. The power of the dragon on his body made Allen's strength 25 points higher, and the power of the wielding cross sword was astonishing. Sword dart spinning slash at this moment, the sword was crisscrossed, leaving a huge hole in the 3 middle level demons. The 3 demons sprayed blood and wailed constantly. Only then did they realize that Allen was much more difficult to deal with than they had imagined. He barely opened his eyes, and the bone hammer in his hand flew out of his hand. Allen lowered his head to avoid one, and then swung his long sword horizontally to block another bone hammer. The berserker was worthy of being a berserker. He suffered such a serious injury, but he didn't care at all, and rushed towards Allen with blood all over his body. Just as Allen was about to step forward, the chip directly prompted, "Squat down." Allen squatted without thinking, and a sharp wind pressure passed over his head, causing a few strands of hair to fall. The bone hammer of the berserker demon went around in another direction, and hit him from behind. Allen rolled over, and the sharp sword in his hand cut a wound on the leg of a claw demon. After avoiding the bone hammer chasing from behind, Allen stood up with a somersault. Stunned, the berserker demon who rushed to the front had no time to react at all. He felt his eyes go black in an instant and walked dizzy. However, the magic resistance attribute was very high, and the stun lasted only half a second. But half a second is enough. Many times this is the difference between life and death. Go back home. Allen's cross sword was ready, and he instantly launched. Sword out slashing with the trend. A terrifying wind pressure rushed over. The berserker demon had just woken up from the dizziness, and a sword light was already close in front of him. In his desperate eyes, a terrifying cut was instantly made on his upper body. The colorful internal organs were exposed in the air, falling down, and blood sprayed all over him. Just when Allen was about to continue to deal with the next 2 demons, he found that the other 2 demons had been divided into 4 parts. The strong vitality made their bodies twitch constantly. A tall figure stood not far away, and the strong negative energy made Allen almost breathless. Dark vision gave Allen a good vision even in the dark night. Just one glance made Allen feel cold all over, breathing rapidly, holding the cross sword tightly in his hand. His muscles tensed, his heart was extremely alert, and the chip was frantically alarming. Ding. Negative energy reaction detected. Energy level unknown. Extremely dangerous. Please move away quickly. Please move away quickly. Chapter 75 Blood Wasteland. What kind of existence is this? Allen felt that the aura of this monster was not weaker than Alfred, and was even stronger. You have to know that Alfred is the Dean of the Five Rings Tower and a 3rd level Great Wizard. This is a Death Knight. He is wearing heavy armor, and sitting on an undead warhorse. He holds a large saber in his hand. Allen estimates that the exaggerated shape must weigh at least 300 pounds. There are 2 swords intertwined behind him, a dark red cloak, which is stained with dark red blood, and has been torn at the edges. The aura is like the abyss and the sea, and there is a strong breath of death around him. On his head is a bullhorn helmet with a broken horn. He wears a hideous mask, and there are a pair of blue flames in the eyes. The flames jump slightly, and Allen feels a chill. A high level Death Knight. And it is a Death Knight who is close to legend or even legendary. Allen felt his breathing quicken. This is a big trouble. This broken system is really unreliable. It takes a lot of time to accumulate energy to travel through time. Let's just travel through time and come to this broken plane. Let's not talk about the abyss demons. Here comes another more terrifying uncle. The so-called magician is awesome, but the ungrown magician is a rookie. This is thrown directly into the dungeon of hell difficulty. What should I do? Allen's heart was left with only the shit. Seeing that the Death Knight did not take action, he dared not move. After more than 10 seconds, even the wind around him stopped. Living people. The cold voice of the Death Knight came out. The voice sounded a little strange, but it was barely distinguished as a variant of the Sith language. Yes. Allen answered cautiously, but did not relax at all. This is a blood wasteland. You shouldn't come. The voice was still cold, but Allen seemed to hear a hint of envy in it. However, because he didn't know the situation, Allen did not use the ancient dragon's dialogue style, but I still came. Isn't it good to be alive? What if he takes action? Allen tightened his lips. This is a battlefield of the dead. Living people should not come here. The Death Knight rode over and looked down at Allen. Follow me, I'll take you out. After saying that, he left first. Allen was confused and hesitant, not knowing what this Death Knight was up to. Clang. The giant saber was put away. Allen shuddered. Wait, I'll finish packing. People under the eaves must bow their heads. Allen manipulated the wizard's hand. He quickly took out the soul crystals from the heads of several intermediate demons, wiped them with rags, and put them directly into the dimension bag. The Death Knight did not urge them, but just watched quietly. One person and one horse began to walk along the edge of the mountain. At this time, the night was about to pass. The Death Knight led the way silently in front. Allen was relieved at this time. If he couldn't run away, he could only do what he wanted. Gradually, the sky began to brighten, but the sky was still dim. The two were moving very fast. At first, the Death Knight would observe Allen to see if he could catch up. After walking for a while, he stopped paying attention. Along the way, Allen was even more frightened. There was no breath of life wherever he passed. The only living thing was the demon. Every time a demon appeared, the Death Knight would rush up immediately. Allen also saw the strength of this Death Knight. The undead warhorse under him was tireless. He carried the Death Knight in full armor and galloped. All demons, whether low level or medium level, were killed with one blow. A single cut would split them in two. Even the flying winged demons could not escape. The undead warhorse kicked with 4 hooves, and a cluster of blue flames emerged from its hooves. Then the undead warhorse flew into the air, and a flash of knife light passed by. The bodies that were cut into 2 pieces fell from the sky. These terrified demons were no more difficult to kill than chickens in front of this Death Knight. Allen followed all the way, and picked up more than a dozen soul crystals. Along the way, they only ate, and slept and hurried. The food was eaten long ago. There was nothing to eat, except demons on this barren land. Allen tried roasting demon meat. After taking a bite, a sulfur smell filled his mouth. The rest was thrown away directly. Fortunately, Allen had learned the secondary spell of magic bread. After using it, he could make 10 pounds of magic bread a day. It was enough to eat, but the taste was not good. Drinking water was easy. The water element could easily gather a large cup of water. The Death Knight walked in front silently without communicating with Allen. Along the way, what Allen saw shocked him. The land was already dark red. In the dark red soil, when he stepped on it, there was often a crackling sound. This was the sound of bones being severely weathered and crushed. There were densely packed pits everywhere on the battlefield. The bottom of the pits even showed signs of melting. This was the trace of high temperature burning. Weathered bones, rusted armor, and swords scattered around were mostly rusty. After nightfall, the Death Knight finally stopped and used magic to create several earth walls to block the wind in the wilderness. The strong smell of blood and sulfur filled the nose, and from time to time, a few pieces of phosphorus flames danced in the wind on the battlefield in the distance. After lighting the bonfire, Allen ate and began to practice. After becoming a formal wizard, the primary meditation method has completely failed. Now he is using the Crimson Eye meditation method that Allen exchanged. This meditation method requires meditating on a pair of eyes in the sea of consciousness. The eyes are composed of many runes. After meditating on the eyes, the surrounding elemental energy begins to enter Allen's body in large quantities. After a large amount of elemental energy enters, it slowly dissipates, and some of it remains in the body. Compared with the primary meditation method, this Crimson Eye is nearly 10 times more powerful. However, Allen understands that this is largely due to the growth of mental power and Allen's Red Dragon bloodline. If Allen's qualifications are tested again at this time, it will be found that he has already reached level 5 qualifications, and his qualifications will even continue to grow with his bloodline. Feeling the surging blood in his body, Allen breathes regularly, and the elemental energy is constantly alternating. If you take some of his blood at this time, you will find that there is a clear golden color in Allen's blood. With breathing, this golden color will also appear and disappear. Feeling the elemental energy washing over the body, this reciprocating tidal surge slowly enhances the mental power and physical fitness. A trace of energy penetrates the blood and bones, and finally disappears in the sea of consciousness. In the sea of consciousness, the mental power is also slowly growing. During this period, after breaking through to the formal wizard, Allen's mental power will have a rapid growth stage, which will last for half a year to a year. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.